Okay, good morning, everyone, and a very warm welcome to today's Economy and Infrastructure Committee meeting. And without further ado, I'll just introduce the top table. And from my left here, we have Fraser Croft, Strategic Lead, Environment and Infrastructure. Then I have Councillor Jack Welsh, Vice Convener of the committee. I have Jess Guild from Democratic Services to my right, and I have Serge Marone, Strategic Lead for Economy, Development and Planning, furthest to my right. I'll now ask the clerk to confirm any apologies received and to advise of the members in attendance and online.
Thank you, Convener. We have apologies today from Councillor Anderson with Bailey Ahern substituting, Bailey Brock with Councillor Cuthbert substituting, and Councillor Forbes with Councillor Allen substituting. There's two members online. I'll ask to confirm they're present, please. Councillor Kogali?
Yes.
And Councillor Robertson?
Present, thank you.
Thank you. All other members are in the chambers, Convener.
Okay, thanks very much. Can I move on first then to declarations of interest? Can I ask if there are any declarations of interest in respect of the business on the agenda today? Doesn't appear to be. Okay, no declarations of interest. Item 3 on the agenda is the minute of the meeting of the Economy and Infrastructure Committee on the 5th of February for approval. Are there any observations, or can we agree the minute of the meeting held on the 5th of February? Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to the outstanding business statement, which is item 4 on the agenda. And first of all, can I ask William Mahoney, Deputy Road Maintenance Manager, to provide a brief update on action number 18 in relation to road gully cleansing. Willie.
Thank you, Convener. The gully emptying systems went live on the council's internet, yes, and the customer has to open the PKC website and then enter gully, and they'll be directed to the page that includes details of the gully emptying. The page includes a YouTube video, which I think we've all seen before, about road gullies. It advises what happens when the gullies are cleaned and what happens with the waste. And there's a link to an interactive map which allows the customer to drill down to see when a particular gully was last cleansed, and if it's blocked or if there's been any reason why it's not been cleaned. There's also a section showing the strategy when we'll carry out the gully emptying in a particular ward or on an A-class road. And there's also a section advising what we are not responsible for. There is also a dashboard which shows our current progress on gully emptying, and up to the 26th of May, it's set at 19.1% of the gullies we intend to clean this year. And there's also a button that allows any customer to report a road defect or a gully defect. And that's the situation as at present. So it is live now, so customers can use it.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any questions to Mr. Mahoney? Councillor Lane.
I was just wondering, Willie, if we will use the information that we gather, if it points to hotspots, to maybe finesse or alter what we're doing in the order that we do them. Because there's no point in collecting information if we don't act on it.
Thank you, Councillor. When the gully modernisation programme started in 2017, we did collect that data. We gathered the data about the number, the level of siltation within each gully pot. It was 25, 50, 75 and 100%. What we considered was that we would carry out cleanse over two cycles and get that data, use that data to determine which sites were hotspots. unfortunately, it wasn't consistent. So what we found was that when we were looking at a particular flooding location, we would get the level of siltation there. We added them to a different cleansing schedule. So they're cleansed every 2 years. Twice every year. But we found that gullies with 100% silt in them, 1 year when we went back the following year, there was not the same level of silt in them. So it was difficult to actually organise a sensible revised rota. What we done then was that we did look into it, and we found that most of the gully siltation was caused by things like agriculture, potato fields, carrot fields, and particularly if it had a steep slope from the carriageway. What we then done was we actually reviewed our strategy, and we've actually done it in a risk-based system based on the traffic speeds and the road usage. So the more people that's using the road, more chance there is of being an incident if there is standing water in the carriageway. So that whilst the data was collected and it's still available, we found it wasn't consistent enough to actually use for that purpose.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Duff.
Thanks, Convener. Thanks, Will. This is a welcome development, but I wonder, will the package show whether block drains have been reported to us or not?
At the moment, it's not designed for that. It's actually based around our road maintenance management system. There may be an opportunity to add something in the future, and it's something that we can look at for further development.
Okay, I don't think there's any further questions. Councillor Stewart, you would like to make a comment?
Thanks, Convener. It was just to thank officers for making this information available on the website. I think it's a useful development in transparency and making information available to members of the public and residents of Perth and Kinross.
Indeed, I was going to add a similar comment myself, but I won't repeat, but completely concur with what you're saying. It's a step forward, and we're grateful to officers for making this happen. Are there any other questions, first of all, in relation to the outstanding business statement? Okay, I wanted to make a brief statement myself, not with a view to opening debate, but just in the interest of transparency and keeping members of the committee and members of the public up to date with regard to the other item on the outstanding business statement in relation to the Enva fire or the fire at the Enva premises that took place in January of this year. Further to the completed action in the outstanding business statement about Enva, I had the opportunity to visit the site yesterday along with Fraser Crofts and other officers and another elected member. It was great to be able to see firsthand all of the work that they do there and the arrangements that they have in place. And I want to thank the Enva team for welcoming us and answering our questions. It was also useful to have another discussion to reinforce the concerns we share about how to ensure that manufacturers take greater account of how the lithium batteries powering their devices can be easily removed for safe disposal by residents once the item is no longer required. This is a national conversation which needs to be had beyond Perth and Kinross, but which impacts on all businesses involved in waste disposal, including our council waste services themselves. I just wanted to update the committee on that visit yesterday. Thank you. Okay, now moving on then to paper 5, which is LDP3, Local Development Plan 3, the Development Plan Scheme. And I'm going to ask for Nicola Swarovski, the Place Strategies Manager and Chief Planning Officer, and Brenda Murray, Development Plans Team Leader, to introduce the report. Thank you.
Thank you. This report seeks agreement for the revised development plan scheme, which is effectively the statement that sets out the council's timetable for the preparation of LDP3. Under statutory guidance, all planning authorities are required to publish this annually. The development plan scheme was last considered by committee in October 24. So we are bringing it earlier than that annual review. And that's in part because of the evidence report being submitted at the end of March and just reconsideration of that timetable. And that's allowed us to change when the proposed plan will be published and ready for members to consider. So the current development plan scheme sets it out that the proposed plan would have been ready by early 2026. The new development plan scheme in front of you now sets that date as the end of 2026. The change allows for longer periods of consultation with key stakeholders and to run any place-based discussions with communities that are required. Just for information, last week the call for sites was extended by a month to allow developers, house builders until the end of July to respond with sites they want to put forward, but equally the LDP2 sites that haven't moved forward as well, and evidence of their deliverability. So in part the timetable, if agreed, has already allowed some of those changes to be made. Included at Appendix 3 is an addendum to the LDP2 delivery programme, which is just for noting. It's the delivery programme that you will have seen before. It's simply in a different format. There's new guidance from Scottish Government that sets out that there's a change in the way that sites have to be scheduled. And so that's what that document is. It sets out the position as of when LDP2 was adopted, and equally the position from the last update, which was in 2024. So the next 12 months are a really important time for development plan team to consider sites, policies, constraints, issues and evidence, working across council teams with stakeholders, elected members and the community to prepare a proposed plan that will deliver a new style LDP for Perth and Kinross, ready for elected members to consider at the end of 2026, with adoption still planned for 2027. So the ultimate timetable doesn't change. The plan is still to have that adoption by 2027, which is before the ultimate May 2028 deadline. Thank you.
Thank you. Brenda, are you anything to add at the moment, or is it simply okay? Thank you very much. Okay, so moving to questions then, and I see in the chat that we have 3 already. So firstly, Councillor Robertson, please.
Thank you, convener. Many communities are actually working on their local place plans to be fed into the LDP3. How does this fit in? How do they fit into the overall scheme of things? Thank you.
I'll start that question. I mean, ultimately, the change in timetable allows and gives communities that bit more time to bring forward the local place plans. Ideally, they would already be in place or certainly coming to the end of that, so we can start to take account of it. But because we're allowing more time for the evidence gathering, the policies, etc., communities do have a bit more time. However, we wouldn't want them to assume that they've got a lot more time and they can take much longer, I suppose. So the message is still keep going. The sooner it's delivered to us, the sooner we can take account of that.
Thank you for that. Could you actually give sort of timescale? I mean, if they don't produce a place plan till the end of this year, is that too late, or what sort of timescale have we got for place plans?
I think what I would say is around the end of this year would be appropriate. I mean, at the moment we're considering, or we will be considering, the call for sites when they come into us. So we'll be looking at that information, and we hope to be having place discussions with communities the turn of the year into the beginning of 2026. So any information coming to us in terms of local place plans, ideally we would have that and be able to include that as part of the the engagement with communities.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Allen.
Thank you, convener, and thank you for the report. It's just an extension to Willie's question, really. I thought I was going to ask my question, but anyway, local place plans on page 21 or on page 6 of your presentation. It says that LPPs are those that are registered by the 31st of January will have the best chance of being included. So I'm trying to understand, is there any point in anybody else getting involved?
I think what you've looked at there is perhaps Appendix 1, which is the 2024 development plan scheme, not the 2025.
Yeah, so page 6 of the revised May 2025 development plan scheme talks about those being registered in 2025. Is that the reference?
I think if I may just come in, Councillor Allen, I think what you're looking at there is the previous development plan scheme dated October 2024. So in your papers for the committee, there was the original development plan scheme for transparency's purposes, and then immediately after that is the proposed development plan scheme just now, which updates that. So I think that's where the confusion might arise.
Yes, Appendix 1 is the current development plan scheme. Appendix 2 is what we're suggesting, which has got on the front page, it's got May 2025. Under local place plans, it talks about them being registered in 2025.
Thank you, convener, for clearing that up. That's what happens when you come in at the back end. Thank you.
No worries at all. I was a bit confused when I first read it myself, I must admit. But yeah, I think we needed to put. I wondered about putting in both, whether it might cause a bit of confusion. But I think for transparency purposes, we needed to. Councillor Duff.
Thanks. Just sticking with that theme about the call for sites. I wonder, obviously sometimes community councils, residents and locals in settlements are keen for their boundaries not to be extended or not, certain areas not to be built on. And I wondered how people can, keep an eye out on the call for sites to see what's been put forward, and if they don't agree with that and they haven't submitted their local place plan, for instance, how are they able to register their objections, if you like, to a particular site being put forward for consideration?
So in terms of call for sites, that would come in, and then we wouldn't publish those immediately. That would be probably towards the end of this year. They would be then taken account of through that proposed plan, and then there would be that period of consultation. But what we could look to do is see whether there's a way to kind of publish them sooner, so it's not the first opportunity isn't within the published plan, as you say, if it's a location that's being extended. So that is a good point. We'll take note of that and see whether we can do something about it. What we wouldn't want to do is necessarily run a completely separate consultation on the call for sites, because that's the idea of the proposed plan. But we'll see whether we can sort of, like I say, highlight it or share them sooner.
Just come in there. Under the old system, we had the main issues report, which basically, it identified options, but it showed at that time all the sites that we'd received. We ended up with articles in the press about 200 houses in Comrie, etc. So it's managing that so as we don't, people don't think this is what is being proposed. And I would also say the place conversations that we, will be looking to have, we will have all the call for sites, prior to that. So through that process, we can, disseminate information at that stage as well. And, in advance of that stage so that people are aware and, know what's on the table for looking at.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Stewart.
Thanks, convener, but the previous question and answer has covered what I wanted to get information on.
Splendid. Councillor Cuthbert, I wonder if you would allow me to take any further questions on LDP3 before we come back to the Appendix 3 as you indicate in the chat. So firstly, Bailey Ahern, thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'm now reading the right one, not the wrong one, but it's still the same question. Do we know if NHS Tayside are engaging and submitting in information for all areas and all sites this time round?
As you have not said in your question, but sometimes it can be difficult in terms of making that contact. But those conversations have started because the call for sites hasn't finished yet, so they've not seen sites they haven't seen in terms of any new sites that we're looking to take forward. But equally, existing allocations in LDP2 need to be, if they're being carried forward, NHS Tayside need to take account of those. So this, what we can say is the conversations are absolutely happening. I think they're on a monthly basis. They're in the diary.
Every 2 months.
Every 2 months. So they're set and in the diary. As soon as we have that information, we'll be sharing that with them so that they're aware of where the greater pressures may be.
And if I might just add, Bailey Ahern, I have received assurances from the Chief Executive of NHS Tayside that they will engage as fully as possible in this process.
Thank you.
Councillor Duff, is this still about LDP3 rather than LDP2?
It's on Appendix 3, sorry. I'll wait. Thank you.
Okay, right, okay. Councillor Cuthbert in that case, please.
Thank you, Convener. It's a follow-up to the question by Councillor Ahern. But in the planning committee, we've had already quite a lot of consideration about the NHS, and I believe in Bridge of Erne, they indicated they didn't have capacity, but we still gave consent for a site. So I'm just wondering, how will we take on board comments from NHS if they say, no, we can't provide capacity for these sites?
That's clearly something it depends what they're saying to us. Is it that it's not capacity with currently what they've got? Is it an addition to a surgery? Is it land set aside for a surgery? So all of that needs to be taken account going forward. The difficulty is in some of these places, they are places that we want to see grow, but we can't answer that until we know what NHS Tayside are telling us. But it's, the point is we will absolutely take account of that, but where we can do something about bringing forward additional capacity as well, with support of NHS Tayside.
Okay, thank you. Are there any more questions about LDP3 as opposed to LDP2? Councillor Stewart.
Thanks. And just when you were speaking about the engagement with NHS Tayside, just to confirm that would be with the Health and Social Care Partnership as well.
Yeah, we have a meeting with the Health and Social Care Partnership this afternoon to discuss the call for sites.
Thank you.
Very helpful, thank you. It is such an important area, and I welcome these updates on what's happening behind the scenes. Councillor Smith.
Thank you very much, Convener. I hope this is a relevant question. Do you consult a lot with Scottish Water for any future development, etc., etc.? I think I get worried about all the new development plans that come along, considering that can we adequately look after the situation with the water treatment, etc. at the moment, and we get so many quotes regarding spillage, etc., with the weather forecasts, with all the future forecasts. And it does worry me that when we start adding on all new developments, etc., etc., that do we have the ability to cope with it? Thank you.
Scottish Water are a key stakeholder. So in the same way that we're having those conversations with NHS Tayside, the opportunity would be the same for Scottish Water. They would be advised of all of the, the call for sites, the proposed plan, that they're fully aware of all of that information. But what we can do is try and set up further conversations whilst they're aware of it. Sometimes you don't always get necessarily the feedback we're expecting, so we can follow that up and make sure that they are double check that they are fully aware of everything that is happening in Perth and Kinross.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any further questions on LDP 3, so I'll move on to the questions on the appendix in relation to LDP 2, and firstly, Councillor Cuthbert.
Thank you, Convener. First of all, a comment. On page 49, there's a block of text that goes right across the page. As a dyslexic, I find that incredibly hard to read, so could I suggest that you break that into columns? In terms of my questions, the first question relates to page 52, and it's got listed there Perth Thimble Row Private Housing Association and a number of buildings. I'm just wondering, Thimble Row I thought was going to be converted into a swimming pool area, and I didn't quite understand where they were going to be.
Yeah, Thimble Row is identified there because it was included in the 2023 housing land audit, which is where we take the information from to update the delivery programme. The decisions about the potential PH2O was taken post that. So we still have it in there as a housing site. We have put an asterisk into the document, which highlights the decision that has been taken by the council. So we will continue to monitor that as we prepare the updates to the delivery programme.
If I may just explain, there are two versions of this document here. In the second document, as Brenda has indicated, under Perth Thimble Row, it's indicating now the council has more recently agreed to develop PH2O on the Thimble Row site, and this will be reflected in the next delivery programme and housing land pipeline.
If I go on to my second question, it's really just understanding. On page 55, they've got a list of Old Perth Road in Milner Thorpe. Presumably these are sites that could be developed, but applications haven't yet been received. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly that. So this isn't an updated document, as been explained. It's what the position was at the time the LDP2 was adopted. So that's the first part, and then the second part is on the basis of the housing land audit in 2024. But it's just about the LDP2 allocations. So it's allocations that haven't yet come forward. But when this is updated, which would be in 2026, some of those may well have changed. So it's not an up-to-date position, it's simply a reformatting of existing information, but anything that has changed in that going forward will be updated as we do that.
Okay, thank you. And I think the final question I have at the moment, Councillor Duff.
Thanks very much. It's probably an extension of the question that Councillor Smith asked. And in the appendix, it talks about a delivery programme for the housing, and it's got various dates for start and completion of a number of sites. However, I think as I mentioned at another meeting recently, I'm aware of at least one housing development which is unable to proceed because of power company's inability to provide enough power to the site, which could delay commencement for 4 years beyond our start date for the site. I just wonder, what cognizance do utility companies take of the sites that we're putting forward for building of houses, if it's not in their plans to provide sufficient power or whatever to these sites, that will mean that they can't start at the date that we've got. Thanks.
Sorry, just double checking something there. So they're not key stakeholders, but they're part of obviously people that we want to contact, companies that we want to contact. So again, they're advised of call for sites proposed plan. They're aware of all of that information coming forward, and they should be flagging to us if there's concerns of a site particularly a site not being able to come forward at all, or if there's a delay to a site, because then we could take account of that through the delivery programme. So as I say, this would be updated in 2026, but there'd be a delivery programme that sits alongside LDP3. So in that example that you gave, if it were that it couldn't come forward until the latter part of the plan period, that's what we would take account of. But we are reliant on them coming forward to us. So we can share all that information, but if we don't get it back, we have to assume that sites can come forward, and often it can be at planning permission stage where that information of a site not being deliverable comes forward.
Follow-up, convener. Yeah, I mean, obviously, we talk a lot in the chamber here about the issue to do with housing and the lack of it, and affordable housing particularly, and it's extremely disappointing when something along these lines for a site that's been advertised as a building proposal for a long number of years, to be honest with you, that the power companies don't seem to be, aware of or in a position to deliver on from their side of things in terms of the timescales for a housing development. And I'm not quite sure what pressure that we can put on companies like this to try and align their plans with the housing development plans that we have.
I'm not sure if that was is that a question or a comment?
Are we able to put any pressure on these companies to provide their services in line with our LDP 2 or 3? Thank you.
Serge.
Yes, just to as for information, the utility companies are contacting us when they develop the investment program. It's effectively how they effectively develop substation and connection and so on, and they ask us for this information about housing. What you have the information there. So we are communicating, all this information when they are developing their plans. However, obviously they are in charge of their investment plan. So and the plan is obviously constrained by the funding they have. So they're prioritized. So that may explain why that site has not been coming forward from their side. But what's important there is a two-way communication. So we are communicating, what we are planning to do in terms of what's coming in terms of housing and employment land as well. And they're also trying to incorporate that into the investment programs.
And I think Nicola wants to add something as well.
Just in terms of the new style LDP, and obviously that's what we're working through, so nobody's been through it in its entirety, but the idea behind that and the evidence report is testing some of these things earlier on, deliverability of sites earlier on. It's still absolutely reliant, as Serge says, in terms of companies coming back to us and telling us, but in theory it's flagged much sooner in terms of if there are any issues. But like I say, no authority has been all the way through that process yet.
Okay, thank you for. I see Bailey Ahern, you have a question there, or no? Is that?
Yes, it's on pages 56 and 57. Maybe I'm reading these tables wrong, but if you look at Perth Moray Royal Hospital, it says detail for 58, and then if you look in the years 7, 8, 9 and 10, there's 58 properties. But if you look at others, for example, our Scone North detail for 100, and there you've got something like 259. Almond Valley, the numbers don't match up. So is that planning permission is the detail for 340? Is that the planning permission that's been given, or how have you got those numbers, or where does the 100, for example, on Scone North, where does that end? And is there further planning permission required for the excess houses, or am I reading that table wrong?
Final column is, deliverable beyond the 10-year period.
If you look at Scone North, ignore the last column of 499. It says detail for 100. If you add those numbers up, it comes to over 200. So that's not detail for 100, is it?
I think that means a detailed application is for 100 in terms of what has come forward, but the overall site is, and in terms of that overall delivery. So yes, there could be further planning permission that is required on that. So this is about the allocation. So it's the entirety of the allocation and how we expect that to be delivered over the plan period, but not necessarily does that mean it's got planning permission. So I need to double check, but I think that's what that means is detail for 100 is effectively it's got planning permission for 100, but the entire site is obviously much larger than that. So yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I was just trying to understand the table, that was all. Thank you.
Understood. That's fine. Okay, so I don't see any further questions. I do see a further question. In fact, I see two. Councillor Cuthbert.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm just wondering how we deal with windfall sites. In Kinross-shire, something like 20% of the houses being built are windfall sites, but they're not listed anywhere. And I'm just wondering, is that built into the plan? Is it then reported somewhere?
So the delivery programme is just about the allocations in LDP2. What the other document that exists is the housing land audit, which takes full account of allocations, windfalls, and other sites. So it's not that they're not included or not taken account of, they just exist in a different document. The idea behind this is simply supporting your local development plan and what is going to come forward during that plan period.
Okay, thank you. And a final question, I think, from Councillor Stewart.
Thanks, convener. Not directly related, but in the general scheme of the LDP, just to give an opportunity to ask, we were expecting at this meeting, I think, to consider the supplementary guidance prepared on renewables, and just to ask for an update on that item, please.
Yes, I'm happy to provide an update on that. It was originally scheduled that this paper would come to this committee. However, it's been determined that we previously gave a clear commitment to further engagement with elected members in advance of this coming forward to committee. So rather than rush anything, what we've decided to do is to defer this paper until August, and it'll come back in August.
Thanks very much, convener. Just appreciate the clarification. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. If there are no further questions, I'm going to move the report. This report provides members with an update of the development plan scheme for 2025. The scheme is published annually and provides an explanation of the local development plan, a timetable of preparations for the next development plan, and the participation statement that details our commitment to community engagement. The report highlights the significant volume of work required to prepare the proposed plan, and it is good to see that this will be undertaken collaboratively with communities and other stakeholders. The date for adoption of the plan remains programmed for late 2027, in line with Scottish Government expectations for all local authorities to have a new style local development plan in place by May 2028. I'm happy to accept the recommendations in this report and move the paper for approval. And can I ask Councillor Welsh to second the report?
I'm happy to second the report.
Okay, I'm going to call for comments, and Leader of the Council.
Yeah, thanks. I'll be brief and not. It will not give enough praise for the amount of work that has to be done for this, and elected members in planning and all officers and members of the public, etc. Bringing it together, because it is one of the most important pieces of work that will be done through the council. I like to think that extending the lead-in time and the time for more views to be taken on board will give a better product or outcome rather than that before. Than if we just went with the original deadlines we have. I'd like to thank Brenda, because a few communities who have been doing volunteer work with the local place plan were getting kind of stressed as it got near January 31st. So, and they were welcomed the extension. So thanks for giving them the comfort, and some of them have been completed by and come in. So just thanks everybody, and thanks for the community for taking part in it as well. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Duff.
Thanks, convener. I likewise said thanks to everyone who's been involved in bringing this as far as we've gone so far. I know there's a lot of work being done and a lot more still to come. So hopefully that will go well. I'd just like to use the opportunity to put a call out there for utility companies and others that are involved in the housing situation to pay attention to the information that's contained within these local development plans and to try and align their work to make sure that when these sites come forward for delivery, that everything is in place to make it happen when we need it to happen. Thank you.
Okay, I don't see any further comments other than my own briefly just to endorse and support the comments that have been made by the previous two contributors. Thanks to everybody in Serge's team, Nicola's team, Brenda's team, and the three individuals themselves. It's seeing it from where I see it, the amount of hard work that goes into this is incredible. And we look forward to further updates over the period ahead. So can we agree the recommendations are set out in the report? Thank you. Thank you. Okay, moving on then to item 6 on the agenda, and we'll take a break after item 6, a brief recess of 5 minutes or so at that point. But item 6 is the Perth and Kinross Tourism Strategy and Action Plan 2025 to 2030. And I'd like to ask Suzanne Kumiske, Economic Development Officer, to introduce the report. And we also have Stephen MacDonald, Economic Development Manager, Tourism, Culture and Place, joining to answer questions, etc., as appropriate. Over to you, Suzanne.
Okay, no problem. Oh.
No comment.
Okay, good morning. So this report presents the refreshed Perthshire and Perth and Kinross Tourism Strategy and Action Plan. So we're here really today to outline the plan, which is building on a key economic growth sector for us, with 685 businesses in the region and 8,200 people employed. So this sector is the highest employer within our area at the moment. So the strategy is a refresh. It was originally launched in 2021 with a time span of 5 years. And within 2024, we have reviewed the strategy and following a period of consultation are bringing this paper forward. So there has been extensive consultation with industry, in particular through the Perthshire Tourism Partnership, and with key collaborative groups, and also with all of our local tourism associations, and also with elected members earlier in the year. So at the moment we have been working on the plan. The plan has been aligned with all of our local, regional and national strategies. So there's a clear alignment with the National Strategy Scotland Outlook 2030, with the Regional Tourism Prospectus, which is under development and away to be published, and with the new Perth and Kinross Economic Action Plan. I think within all of these local, regional and national strategies, there has been key themes coming forward, including a stronger, resilient economy across all of these, an aspiration to work towards net zero, and also to clearly target inequalities and tackling those. It's also been written against the backdrop of the new legislation that was published in May 2024 for the Visitor Levy Scotland Act. So that is something that has been shaping some of the discussions as well. In terms of the other sort of evidence base, you'll see within the paper we've outlined the key audiences for the area, some of the major tourism trends that are coming through, and also outline some of the product. Taking all of that in mind, we've set out a strategic framework with key pillars, which are area promotion and destination marketing, investment and infrastructure, market development and internationalisation, and industry resilience and growth. So against all of these, you'll see in the supporting plan that we have a series of actions, and that really is outlining how we will deliver on our ambitions for the area to grow the sector in the coming years. And we'll also be looking into sort of the detail of further funding streams, of which the visitor levy may be one. Just finally, there is a monitoring framework that has been outlined on how we currently measure and how we intend to measure our success going forward. So that primarily looks at sort of number of businesses, number of jobs in the area, visitor spend, number of day visitors, number of overnight visitors, as well as economic impact. So yes, as I say, that is where we have got to with the plan, and I'll open for questions.
Okay, thanks, Suzanne. And yeah, we have the first, we have presently 2 questions from Bailey Ahern. Oh, there's more coming in, so we'll just take your first question just now, Bailey Ahern. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And it's based on your last comment there about the businesses. Paragraph 4.15 on page 65 gives the performance monitoring information that you get. How do you measure the number of businesses, and what sort of businesses do you go to and class as tourists? And also, how do you get the information from them in terms of turnover and any other information you are, and are all happy to provide all the information that you require?
In terms of the number of businesses, so we use Scottish Government Sustainable Tourism figures for those. We've got a team that provided these to us. In terms of the other figures, in terms of number of sort of volume and value, number of visitors, overnight stays, that comes through a company called Global Tourism Solutions, and we use a model called STEAM. We've also got other tourism monitoring frameworks that we use, such as the Visitor Attraction Barometer, and there's also national figures as well provided to us through Visit Scotland and Visit Britain. Most of these are publicly available, and we can certainly share the links to all of these.
Sorry, yeah, the rest of that part of that question was, what type of businesses do you class as tourist? Is it, I mean, hotels? Is it tourist shops? Is it cafes? And how do you get the information from them? And are all businesses happy to pass over the information you require? For example, turnover.
In terms of how the businesses that would be classified under this, I'd have to get the exact codes and look into that, but primarily it will be accommodation, visitor attractions, outdoor providers, hospitality businesses. I can certainly provide that detail. I'll look into that. In terms of turnover, that's not down to individual businesses. It is using this model called STEAM that we use, and gathering data in from various different sources, but it's not down to individual level.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Robertson.
Thank you, Convener. Tourism is a very important industry in Perth and Kinross, as we all know. One of the problems is that tourist businesses are finding, because of various things, their costs rising substantially. And the counter of that, you notice now that the price even of bed and breakfasts in many of our holiday destinations are really expensive. Like, it's not uncommon to pay £200 for bed and breakfast in a moderate sized hotel in Perth and Kinross. What can we do as a council to actually support businesses, tourism businesses, to deal with the costs, the added costs they seem to continually incur, And also, we don't want to outprice ourselves from the competitive tourism market.
Thanks for the question, Councillor Robertson. So as part of the consultation, we've obviously been speaking to businesses and listening to what the key barriers and key challenges to those are. So obviously increasing costs is something that's come up, but there's other areas as well in terms of skills and access to workforce. So what we've tried to do is, I suppose, focus our strategy and action plan on the areas that we can control, and come up with a suite of actions on the back of that. So in terms of increasing costs, we're not in complete control of that, but what we can do is try and support businesses to increase their revenue through better promotion, through investment in infrastructure, etc. And also other areas as well, as I mentioned, skills as well as another kind of key barrier that businesses have identified as a challenge to them. So we've tried to reflect that in the action plan. So we recognise the challenges, and that's very much come through as part of the consultation. But I suppose ourselves and our partners within the Perth and Kinross Tourism Partnership, we've tried to focus our actions on what we can control, and in respect to those challenges.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Donaldson.
Thank you, convener. I just have one question, and that's in relation to the Perthshire Tourism Partnership. Because if I look at the list of the members, and it's not a criticism at all of the partnership, but it's very much skewed to certain particular areas of Perth and Kinross, and there really is a dearth of involvement of tourist bodies in West Perthshire, Strathallan and Strathearn. Now, I know Steve McDonald, you yourself and Oliver Johnson have been visiting local tourism businesses in West Perthshire, and I'm very much grateful for that. But is this a weakness, an imbalance in the setup that from West Perthshire there is a lack of specific bodies, and how do we ensure that the views of local tourism enterprises are factored in properly from those areas? Thanks.
Thank you for the question. I think that is a valid point. So we have a number of local tourism associations. There were originally ones for each of the localities. In some of the areas there are gaps, and I think there has been a trend in recent years where some of the LTAs have certainly disbanded. They don't have a chairperson in post. So the Crieff area is one, and there are a few others, and we did a piece of work last year to look at how we either start to, I guess, energise those areas, and is that the correct model going forward? Where there is a gap, we do have industry reps for the area, and we've tried to speak to individual businesses or collectives to say, would you come along to these meetings and represent? But it is something that we're conscious that there is a gap there at the moment, one that we're hoping to close.
Okay, thanks, Suzanne. Yeah, and I think it is a weakness, and hopefully it's one we can counter. Grateful to you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Allen.
Thank you, convener, and thank you, Suzanne. I'm looking at the visitor levy stuff that you've got in there. At 4.19, it says that local authorities that want to introduce a visitor levy are only able to do so after they have consulted with local communities, businesses, wider tourism sector, etc. Where do we go if there's overwhelming resistance to this?
So just in terms of the visitor levy, we obviously brought a paper to this committee back in February, which gave us approval to commence early engagement. We've had a workshop with members, and a briefing note has been sent out as well. We will be launching the early engagement shortly on the visitor levy, and we can't really give comment in terms of how that will go, and what the outcome of that will be, which I don't want to kind of predetermine what that might be. So I think we'll be working hard over the next few months to pull together the engagement on that, and a paper is due to come back to council in December, which will outline the results of that engagement, and that will be up for council to decide on that. But yeah, we don't want to predetermine what that might be. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Kogali.
Hi, thank you very much. I was wondering whether seasonal worker supply has been an issue that's been raised, and as part of that, has the accommodation of those workers been a problem? Just given we're obviously talking about skills shortages, etc. If they could come from other parts of the country seasonally, obviously that's maybe not the final solution we want, but might be a bit of a break at the moment on potential growth.
Thank you for the question. Through the consultation, certainly recruitment and rural recruitment in particular has been a theme that's been coming through, and also staff accommodation has been another one. So it has been built into it certainly has been built into the plan, and there have been conversations at Tay Cities level looking at the new Tay Cities hospitality programme. So that is just a way to start the business case being developed at the moment. So that's something that I fed back in there, and I think it is fair to say that it has been coming through a number of the sessions.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Duff.
Thank you. On page 74, there's a bit about understanding the audience and some interesting statistics there about our visitors, including one which says that international markets make up 15% of the visits, but 21% of the expenditure. In the last paragraph there. I just wondered, obviously that international market brings in more per head of visitors to the economy, and I wondered if that's reflected in our marketing strategy in terms of how we apply our budget. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. In terms of the international market, there's been a significant amount of work and sort of energy put behind that in sort of, I'd say, the last 6 to 7 years. We work in a regional partnership with Dundee, Angus and Fife, and we work on an initiative called what we actually broadly frame and take out to industry as Tay Country. So working with Visit Scotland, UK Inbound, Visit Britain, Coach Tourism Association. So we work with a number of these partners to attract in really sort of the groups and FITs from international markets. So it's something that, yeah, it is an area of focus for us. I think it's worked to our advantage in recent years, in particular with the US market. It's been a little bit more challenging to bring back the European markets. But yes, there has been a significant effort on that market.
Thank you. Now, I would just add as well, the proposed strategy, one of the 4 key pillars is that of market development and internationalisation. I think that's so important that we do look outward and try and attract visitors from all over the world to come to our beautiful county. Thank you. Councillor Smith.
Thank you very much, Convener, and thank you very much, Suzanne, who we speak to 1 or 2 times. This is not so much a comment and observation, but I'd like to read out page 70 here. And at its heart...
Sorry, is there a question, Councillor?
Yes, there is a question. At its heart, the River Tay sets the scene for the area's magnificent outdoor offering, which encompasses 28 Munros, 48 lochs, 16 rivers and 2,000 square miles of glorious Scottish countryside. This provision of natural assets has become the picture-perfect backdrop for a host of business activities, including paddleboarding, kayaking, canoeing, fishing, walking and hiking. My question is that with a rush to net zero, we seem to be having a flood of what you would say wind farms all over our beautiful countryside, which is really upsetting this situation here. Now, what I'd like to know in a question is, do you actually are you allowed to speak to developers? Because at the end of the day, this will definitely affect your business. Thank you.
Thank you. It's difficult to comment on any kind of individual or specific developments, but I suppose I would just mean just to reassure that when any planning applications, for example, come in, we do input into that as economic development, so that is reflected in that. But it's difficult for us to kind of give a comment on any kind of specifics on that. But we are consulted and our views are inputted into any applications.
Thank you.
Thank you. And the final first question that I see at the moment is Councillor Watt.
Hello. Thank you. Sorry. Thank you, convener. My question is from the Visit Scotland link on the paper, and it's domestic nights of 1.5 roughly million domestic nights. Is that purely tourism nights, or does that just include all people staying in the county on business or on working in the area? Because that has a huge knock-on effect if that includes them, because other businesses not supplying food and bed nights, obviously are not going to pick up any business from that.
Thank you. Am I understanding the question? Are you asking in particular about day visitors or domestic nights?
There we go, sorry. Is that covering everybody that stays in a hotel room, whether they're here on tourism or here on business or work, or is it dialed into that deeply, or is it that's just purely tourism bed nights?
That includes everybody who would be staying. So we would consider if it was all visitors, whether that's a resident in their own boundary or a visitor from overseas or from out with the area. So it does include, yes, everybody. We don't drill down to that detail. It's not at the moment, certainly. You can possibly look into that.
So just to come in on that one as well, just to expand on what Suzanne says. So business tourism is a big thing for us as well, and it forms a major part of our plan. And I think when you look at spend, that is a significant part of our tourism market. So business tourism is included within the overall tourism product.
Thank you. My point was that business travellers aren't necessarily using non-food and accommodation businesses. In the wider tourism business of kayaking, paddleboarding, golf, for instance, they're not necessarily using that. So it's maybe something that we should be looking into.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to second questions. Firstly, Baillie Ahern.
Thank you very much. My question's on page 69 of the pack, but page 3 of the report. The list of businesses in the partnership. I don't see the Association of Scottish Self-Caterers or the Scottish Bed and Breakfast Association down there. How else are you getting that information if they're not a part of the partnership?
Thank you for the question. So the partnership at the moment is, it's certainly made up of local representatives largely and national agencies. We don't actually have representation there from any of the trade associations, such as Scottish Tourism Alliance or Association of Scottish Self-Caterers. We do engage with them in other ways through one-to-ones, do have a strong relationship there, but the partnership is at local level, so we don't invite in trade associations.
Okay, thank you. Baillie Ahern, seeing how you've got the microphone, so to speak, do you want to ask your further question? And then we'll come on to the next one from Councillor Allen.
Thank you. Mine's based on page 79, and there's 2 paragraphs in there. Develop a strategic waste network, disposal network up the A9 corridor for camper vans, motorhomes in the area utilising public and private sector assets. We've tried to negotiate with or get information from Scottish Water before, but they've refused access to the network. So has this been resolved? And the one afterwards, consider visitor management through a multi-agency approach at hotspot areas and develop tactics to encourage dispersal of visitors to lesser known areas where there is capacity. How on earth are you going to do that unless you physically pick them up and move people? How are you going to show them to lesser known areas?
Thank you. So just picking up on the strategic waste, we've been in discussions with Scottish Water over a number of years now. We were originally told that any development north of Perth City was blocked. We then had further dialogue with them, or the Waste Services team did, and they were open to considering and looking at a potential point in Pitlochry. At the moment, in terms of council-owned assets or council assets that are being delivered to other delivery partners, we've got a waste disposal point at Broxton Park and Ride. We've got one at the River Tawey Hub, and we've also got one at Grand Tully Campsite. Those were rural tourism infrastructure projects. It would be ideal to get further developments up the A9 corridor, and Pitlochry is really the one that's looking potentially most likely. We did consider Dunkeld, but that one was that one was one that we were not given the go-ahead for. But I think it's worth having further discussions about the strategic waste points. Your point about dispersal. So I think that is it's something that we're really keen to develop. We have been working with a company called Whereverly on a Explore Outdoor map, and it's something that we worked on a project with Civtech essentially to try and move people around the area and away from hotspots. I think it's requiring further work. We've got conversations coming up with them as well, but it is a strategy that's deployed in a lot of areas. The Lake District being one, they actually work very strongly on this. So yeah,
just add to that point. So I think, as Suzanne pointed out, there are kind of key hotspots within Perth and Kinross, which is great, and we recognise the benefits of that. But as has been alluded to in other questions, Perth and Kinross is a big area, and we've got a lot to offer, both in terms of our natural landscape, but also the type of tourism businesses and attractions that we've got. So again, going back to the pillars within the strategy around area promotion and making sure that we've got the proper infrastructure in place, we think we can showcase the whole of Perth and Kinross and move people around the county a little bit more, which would hopefully spread the benefit and the impact across the whole of Perth and Kinross.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Allen, please.
Thank you again, convener. Back to page 66 and at 4.1.8 on the visitor levy, it's suggesting that local authorities have the power to determine the percentage rate, the geographical area where it applies, and local exemptions. It also goes on to suggest whether we can charge it in various parts of the areas or not. It's just really a very supportive comment as well as a question. This is a very complicated matter. I've looked into this quite a bit, and I just see complications all around the place. And I think we can simplify the task of our officers if we keep it as a flat rate rather than varying rates. Thank you.
Don't think there was a question there. There wasn't a question there, but no.
The question is, are we looking at a flat rate rather than varying rates?
I think we just have to operate within the legislation. So the legislation states that it's a percentage rate at the moment. So that's what we will be going out and engaging on within that legislation.
Councillor Duff, final question at the moment.
Thank you. My question is in relation to, I think it's page 75 probably, and that's about opportunities for the visitor economy in Perth and Kinross, and it goes into discuss various types of new types of tourism probably that are coming along. But I was interested to know whether there's been any work done on how the public transport system impacts visitor numbers, and I think we've probably all been places where public transport is pretty good, and how the tourists can use that to get around. But I'm conscious that we don't have a public transport system like that in Perth and Kinross, and I just wondered, do we know how it impacts on tourism numbers, but how do we encourage visitors also to take part in our public transport consultation that's going on just now? Thank you.
Thank you. Certainly on public transport, the sort of really encouraging figures that we've had recently, we have been in discussion with the Pitlochry Partnership, and their key rep there is part of the Highland Mainline Community Partnership. So we've seen a real uplift on train travel through all of the stations actually in Perth and Kinross at the moment. I think there's been a lot of work these national agencies to encourage train travel, and I think people are themselves, considering about their carbon footprint. So that I've certainly got data on train travel. In terms of other forms of public transport, I can't say that I can answer that. Something I would have to come back to. Anything to add?
No, I suppose the only other part of the question was encouraging visitors to engage in our public transport consultation engagement. So yeah, we absolutely will do that through the partnership, through other mechanisms as well, because it's really important in terms of how people get around. We talked in the last question about moving people around the area to kind of spread that impact and benefit. So public transport is an obvious way of doing that. So we'll be encouraging people to do that.
And if I might just add, the point you make, Councillor Duff, about ensuring that we do receive comment and observation and thoughts from the visiting public as well is so important, and considerable effort, trust me, is going into ensuring that the consultation exercise and the engagement exercise that will commence or is planned to commence on Monday of next week, if this paper is approved, will be. The intention is that we are as comprehensive as we possibly can be with all parts of the community, businesses, residents, and very definitely visitors, to ensure that we do get a full range of opinions on what is, as Councillor Allen has pointed out, a complex area, but essentially, it's just so important that we get views on all areas of that. So thank you for your questions. I don't see any more, so therefore I'm going to now move the report. The Perth and Kinross Tourism Strategy and Action Plan 2025 to 2030 sets out a bold and ambitious vision for the future of tourism in Perth and Kinross. The strategy focuses on 4 key areas: destination marketing, investment and infrastructure, market development and internationalisation, and industry growth and resilience. Together, these priorities aim to increase our visitor numbers, attract inward investment, and support our local businesses to grow, create jobs, and thrive. With a strong emphasis on collaboration and delivery, the plan outlines a clear path towards sustainable growth in the tourism sector and continuing to play a vital role in the economic and cultural life of Perth and Kinross. I'm very happy to accept the recommendations in the report and move the paper for approval. And can I ask Councillor Welsh to second the report, please?
Again, I'm happy to second the report, Convener.
Are there any comments, please? Councillor Donaldson.
Thank you, Convener. First of all, can I thank Suzanne Comiskey, Steve McDonald and other officers for the work that they put into this report. And I think the important point is, you know, a report of this nature cannot cover each and every major tourist location within Perth and Kinross, places such as Scone Palace, the Carnegie Centre in Epefre, a whole variety of other places, although some are referred to in this report to illustrate one or two themes. But above all, the importance of this report is to set out a strategic framework. It does go hand in hand with the whole question of a visitor levy scheme for Perth and Kinross. But as I think people have heard, there's going to be very extensive engagement on that front before the report comes to Council in December, and then consultation, and then after that, quite a lengthy implementation period. And whatever maybe some people's views may be, I think that very exercise in itself might be helpful to us in determining our future tourism policy for Perth and Kinross. I think one thing I do want to point out is on opportunities, because there's always opportunities that do arise. I think one that's, revenue neutral, and another I also want to mention, and then I'll conclude. First of all, I actually do think there is potential in the whole area of family history and genealogy. I'm not sure whether this is going to be feasible, but with the National Records of Scotland, with Scotland's people, there are certain hub centres throughout Scotland, not just Register House in Edinburgh or the Mitchell in Glasgow, but also Alloa and Hoyt and Kilmarnock, Inverness. I think there really would be benefits if it's possible, and I'm not sure the legal position, because I think it's 1965 legislation, if we could link into that to become a hub for Scotland's people, if that's feasible, I think that would be a big benefit, not least given the fact that 27%, I think, of our visitors to Perth and Kinross are from North America. Final point is on, we're referring to the Tay Country, but I think also on paths and footways, and that's important in terms of our corporate objectives as well. We refer to the Catherine Trail, to the Tay Way, and very much congratulate the work done by Perth and Kinross Countryside Trust, Drummond Hill, up at the Carnegie Centre. But also I think we might want to think if there's any possibility of linking in with Stirling and with Argyll and Bute. And what I'm thinking here of is a coast-to-coast path. It has been mooted before. Rosanna Cunningham in particular was in favour of this. And we're really talking of potentially going from Iona to St Andrews. If you get to Newborough, you've already got the Fife Coastal Path. I just think that if you look at the West Highland Way, if you look at something like the Pennine Way, I just think the potential of that and the type of tourism it would engender is worth looking into.
Thank you.
It's early days, but I think there's a real possibilities on that front. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you, Councillor Donaldson. Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Convener. Just briefly to thank Stephen and Suzanne and others for the report before us today. It's a very welcome report and full of good news. I think if anybody doubts the importance of the tourism action plan, they just need to read paragraph 4.3, which talks about us having 670 tourism businesses, 8,200 full-time equivalent jobs, 2.3 million tourism visits and 703 million generated directly or indirectly for the local economy. So it's extremely important to Perth and Kinross and its economy, and we need to make sure that we make the most of these opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. Councillor Stewart.
Thanks very much, convener. It's not about the content, but as somebody who's not a fan of ever cascading council and corporate objectives, priorities, strategies and action plans, to actually produce a strategy and action plan and keep it to a short and succinct 16 pages is great. Thank you very much.
It's appreciated. Thank you. Councillor Lane.
Thanks, convener, and thanks, Stephen and Suzanne, for all the work you've done on this. Perth is well known nationally for its tourism, and I was surprised. I was down in Leeds last week and meeting people from all over the country, and whenever you mention Perth, obviously a lot of people, majority of people knew about the museum. A lot of people knew about the bridge, Destiny Bridge, and a lot of people know places like Pitlochry, Dunkeld, even down to mountain biking. This is people just know Perth, and I think with the work that's been done, I think Perth's becoming even more and more a destination place to come to, and it's something we have to continue and do what we can as a local authority to enhance the offer we've got. I endorse Councillor Kigali's statement that we don't have enough people we don't have enough people to resource our tourist industry, and on the back of that they're competing against people working in all other sectors in public health and care and that. So it was really good of him to sort of endorse what I think we need is a bespoke immigration policy for Scotland to fill all these jobs. So that was useful that he brought that to the table. The other thing that we can't control, as Councillor Robertson says, prices are going up everywhere. And when you look at the inflation that's hit the UK in the last 3 or 4 years through policy decisions, and then you look at the national insurance hike that's been, these are things that are facing the whole country and not just tourism industry in Perth and Kinross. And so we can't control that as a local authority. So I think this paper here shows how we can enhance and influence what we can control. So thank you very much for bringing the paper.
Thank you for these further contributions. Can we agree the recommendations as set out in the report? Thank you. Okay, I'm going to take a brief recess now. It's 10:52. We'll start back at 11 o'clock sharp. Thank you. Okay, welcome back to this. Again. Yes. Well, welcome back to the meeting, and we now move on to item 7 on the agenda, which is the review of Perth Harbour operations to support Harbour Quarter and Inner River Tay developments. So I'm going to ask Alan Dobson, Economic Development Officer, to introduce the report. Thank you.
Thanks, convener. This report presents the review of Perth Harbour operations to support the Harbour Quarter and Inner River Tay developments. The report updates the Council on Perth Harbour operations arising from the decision to close the harbour to commercial traffic and to seek regeneration through the Perth City Development and Design Framework and wider Inner River Tay developments for leisure, tourism and nature. The report updates on recent discussions with Transport Scotland with respect to removing from the Council the competent Harbour Authority duty, but remaining the Statute Harbour Authority, as outlined in the report and in the appendices. To recap, in February 2023, the committee agreed to close the harbour, but also to market it as a long-term lease opportunity for another operator. This process concluded in September 2023, and although the Council agreed to accept one submitted bid, the bidder subsequently withdrew from the process. In pursuing the closure of the harbour, as prescribed, the harbour order process must be followed to ensure legal robustness. The harbour order process is outlined in the guidance published by Transport Scotland and Appendix 1 summarises this guidance and process, which was also detailed in the supporting document submitted alongside the February 2023 report to the Council about the future of harbour operations. In early February 2025, Transport Scotland suggested a harbour revision order as a more straightforward method for closure, alleviating several concerns they had, particularly regarding health and safety risks. During this process, and despite having virtually no commercial traffic, the Council continues to commercial operations and maintain compliance with legislation and guidance. In the year 24-25, one vessel docked in April 2023 and another in November 2024 and another in November 2024. The Council has also supported the main commercial user to progress new border control points designation for import products for animal origin, i.e. fishmeal, and submission of an application for a dredging licence. Costs were incurred by the main commercial contractor user of the harbour. At the Finance and Resource Committee meeting on the 5th of February 2025, the strategic lead Serge of Economy Development and Planning suggested the exploration of the option of a harbour revision order rather than a harbour closure order in line with Transport Scotland's suggestion, as the harbour revision order process is likely to be simpler and more manageable. This option will still implement the February 2023 Council decision to close the harbour to commercial traffic to focus on leisure activities, supporting the delivery of the harbour quarter as promoted in the City Centre Development and Design Framework. A harbour revision order, HRO, will be required, retaining the statute harbour authority duty and health and safety obligations, excluding traffic for commercial vehicles over 24 metres, and cessation of the competent harbour authority duties in line with Transport Scotland's suggestions. If agreed, this will need to be consulted upon and the results submitted to Scottish Ministers for approval. Meanwhile, there will still be costs associated with running the harbour, including a harbour master and operations, asset maintenance, health and safety equipment. And we've estimated budget pressure approximately 52k per annum. This would mean that the Council would still have achieved a budget saving of around 100k from its original 23-24 budget saving target of 157. But this ongoing estimated budget pressure would need to be reported and considered by the Finance and Resource Committee. Finally, throughout a number of years, there's been a harbour board to guide the running of the harbour and dedicated members who have been pivotal in tackling the various challenges faced by the harbour. However, given the current circumstances, it is proposed that the board is no longer necessary and the report recommends it should be discontinued. Myself and Serge Marone are here to answer any questions that committee may have.
And Steve, I think, there as well, yeah. Okay, thank you very much for that, Alan. Calling for questions now, and I see a number in the chat already. Councillor Duff, first of all.
Thank you, Convener. And just at the outset, I have a feeling that this paper will elicit quite a number of questions this morning. Hopefully you'll be prepared to give it a good. Can I just ask what the current status of the Harbour Board is? It hasn't met since November 2023. Who is legally the harbour duty holder at the moment? And can we have confirmation that this committee can just discontinue the Harbour Board as requested in the recommendations? Thank you.
Serge?
Yeah, so in terms of the harbour duty holder, is the council as an entity is the current harbour duty holder, but as part of the scheme of administration, it's effectively me who is effectively carrying out that responsibility on behalf of the council, and it's reflected in the compliance documents for the Perth Harbour. This is how it is stated in the compliance documents for the harbour.
And sorry, can I just have confirmation then that this committee can discontinue the Harbour Board as requested in the recommendation? So that's quite competent.
So I will need to check that with our colleagues in.
I think Scott Henry would confirm. Scott, do you want to just say a few words about it?
Yes, just to confirm, the Harbour Board, when it was constituted, wasn't an official outside body or committee of the council. So when it was set up as part of the original policy decision around the harbour. So yes, the short answer is yes, this committee on behalf of the council can agree to discontinue the board.
Thank you. First question, Bailey Ahern.
Thank you very much. And I apologise. A lot of the information I had for this was on my OneDrive, which was wiped clean on my laptop upgrade on Monday. So I've lost a lot of the information. I take issue with some of the answers that have just been given there. My first question is why the board weren't given prior notice of this paper and this meeting. I've queried it before, and on the 27th of September 22, David Littlejohn apologised for me for not calling the board and giving information prior to it going to finance and resources, and yet this is the first time we see the information in this paper. My question is who can discontinue the board? And you've just said there that the Harbour Authority is the council, yet we were given training on the Port Marine Safety Code and other codes, and we were told in that training that the board has a legal responsibility, a legal obligation, and are legally accountable. And I was told in there as chair of the Harbour Board, should something have happened in the harbour, I potentially could end up in front of a sheriff trying to justify the actions of the board. To me, that is not an advisory position, that is a board position. The board is made up of members of all parties in here, and that membership is agreed at full council. I disagree that this committee can just fold the board.
So noting your comments, however, the fundamental questions, if you can answer these, thanks.
Hopefully in advance of this meeting that an email was sent out by myself to the former board members just to mention, so hopefully that's arrived at everyone, and the officers would have been CC'd in. I can double check that after just now. And going back to the question around the board member, the advice that I was given is that the board had been an advisory, and I would just go back to the legal position that was stated previous.
Serge?
Yeah, I can confirm that an email have been sent to all the members of the board. So I don't know what happens if you have not received that email, and I apologize if you have not received the email, Billy Aaron, but I've seen the email myself, so I don't know what happened there.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Robertson.
Thank you, convener. Can I ask about Appendix 2? Appendix 2 is just unbelievable when you go through it and you find the huge delays that have been put into this process by Transport Scotland. And I note that the leader of the council, Councillor Lings, has even been involved in this, trying to speed the process up. Can I ask what communications there have been between ourselves as a council and the Minister of Transport to deal with this obviously hopeless situation that Transport Scotland have been in, and the fact that they continually have to be chased up to move the process forward? We can't allow Transport Scotland to cost this council more and more money that we don't need to spend. So I want to know if there's been any communication between ourselves as a council and the minister responsible for transport on the performance of Transport Scotland in this whole affair. Thank you.
Serge?
No formal communication has been undertaken with the minister, by the council. But you may remember we've obviously tried to keep a constant dialogue with Transport Scotland, and effectively it's reflected in the report that is a change of approach to effectively address the issue we have had in the past of of delays and potentially challenges. So I must say we're working with Transport Scotland, and they are working with us on that, and that's the reason for the report. Is effectively a change of approach, which will help us to reduce any delays in the coming weeks to take that to a successful outcome.
Thank you for that reply. Can I just say that I think lessons have to be learnt here, and I don't think we should just allow Transport Scotland's incompetence to go unmarked. So can I ask that we do write to the Transport Minister and highlight the issues that we've had trying to deal with Transport Scotland and speed this process up? This is, for me, is just not acceptable, and I hope it's not acceptable to you, Convener. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. And yes, I mean, I do accept that this has been a protracted process to date, and yeah, lessons have to be learned. As Serge has said, we need to, subject to any decision today, we need to progress this as quickly as we can, and I can assure you that necessary steps will be taken. I think Councillor Laing just wants to make an additional comment.
The problem, I think, here is that this has never, and I'll ask for confirmation from Serge or officers, this has never been done before to a commercial port. So there was no framework to work with. There was no legal advice to work to of what could, and I think, yes, I've been as frustrated as anyone, but we had to make sure that we were complying with all legalities, and that's why we've come to this position where this was not what we set out to do in the first place, but working with Transport Scotland, we've come to an accommodation to allow us to fill our obligations to the public and everyone else. And yes, it's frustrating, but at least there'll be a framework now if any other port wants to close down. Obviously, our officers have been striving along with Transport Scotland to come at a position that is acceptable to everyone. And I think that'll be, if you want to be, it's groundbreaking to have closed the commercial port, and I think the result is quite good, that it gives us an opportunity to have more leisure, etc., in the harbour. But I do share your frustration. I didn't realise at the time, and I'm sure none of us done it, this was the first time and there was no framework to adhere to. So I agree with your frustration, but I think continuing to work with Transport Scotland officials will be the best outcome we can get.
Thank you for that. Councillor Donaldson.
Thank you, Convener. I think as we've just heard, it's been a highly complex and convoluted process since February 23. We've got a report going to full council on the 10th of September, but the reference is made, and maybe I should have asked beforehand for this meeting, but also there's going to be a report to Finance and Resources on any financial implications of the review of Perth Harbour operations. Just in terms of the timeline going forward, when do you anticipate that report coming forward to Finance and Resources?
So if the report is agreed today, I think we will use the normal financial resources monitoring reports to update the committee to do that. So we will take the first opportunity we have to go to the Financial Resources Committee to update the committee through the monitoring reports, the revenue monitoring reports.
Oh,
yeah, the first opportunity. Yeah, first opportunity we have.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Convener, and thank you to the officers for the report. I'm looking at page 88 and 3.3.5. It says, while the most effective way to reduce obligations would be to advance the closure order, which would relieve the council of more responsibilities, our legal advisors have pointed out another risk. Alongside the full closure order, PKC would need to initiate a separate legal process to amend the relevant bylaws, which would also require minister approval. Now, I understand that this is the first time that this has been done, and I get the frustration, and I appreciate the comments of the Leader of the Council as well, but why was that legal advice not available in 2023?
Serge again.
That was alighted at that point in time, but because we didn't start the process of the harbour closure order with Transport Scotland, that was not obviously a part of the first thing we had to do. We were focusing obviously on the order, more on the bylaws, but that was alighted, you know, right from the beginning. And as Councillor Lane said, because it was new to Transport Scotland, when through the discussion with Transport Scotland, and in addition to the order, other elements in terms of health and safety came to light, which will be required to change the bylaws, which is another process which also required ministerial approval, and that's one of the reasons why we're changing the approach, because with that new approach, you know, the change of the bylaws will be needed. So that's why. But we always knew that there was an implication to the bylaws potentially from the order.
Thank you. Second question, Bailey Ahern.
Thank you very much. And in response to Alan's response to my first question about the email going out, we have a board. They should have asked for the board to be sat down and go through the paper, not do it by email. In terms of the bylaws, we're well aware that we've tried to change bylaws and add bylaws in before, especially with reference to jet skis. And we decided we wouldn't do that because the process is so lengthy, can take several years. And while I'm talking about jet skis, I was reported of a near accident last week with a jet ski and users of Willowgate. So who's going to maintain security on the water? Who's safety on the water? Who's going to maintain the radio if there's an accident or a spillage? Bearing in mind that the Harbour Authority goes all the way up to Dundee Bridge and not just the little harbour here. And who's going to be maintaining the navigation aids and checking those out? And are we going to have somebody permanently on the radio for safety of the boats at Willowgate?
Serge again.
Effectively, that's the reason to change. We've changed the approach, because by staying as a statutory harbour authority, the council will still have the capacity to control activities in some way on the river. So yes, there will be a need to support, and it's highlighted in the report, there will still be a need for an harbour master, but the navigation risk assessment will be obviously reviewed based on the new traffic. And so if the commercial traffic vessel over 24 meters will cease, obviously the overall control responsibility for the harbour master will reduce, because it will focus on leisure activities, and that will include a jet ski within the harbour waters, which are obviously upstream, finishing at the railway bridge. So there will still be a possibility of a control beyond downstream the railway bridge in terms of users. That's the reason as well. Keep staying a statutory authority, give the council some control on the uses.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Duff.
Thanks, Convener. If I'm reading this report correctly, then obviously the failure to close the harbour has meant that we haven't made the proposed savings in 23-24 and 24-25 totalling £314,000, but instead we've had to incur expenditure of £308,000 keeping the harbour open for the arrival of 2 vessels. And obviously, if we do agree to this today, it could still be another 6 to 18 months before the change is made. So do we have an idea of what additional costs the council might incur over the next 18 months on top of the £600,000+ that's already cost us? Thank you.
Serge again.
Yeah, so the council has to maintain the compliance with the Port Marine Safety Code until such time that the order has been approved by the Scottish Minister. So until such time, we will have to incur some cost. This year, I mean, it's mentioned in the report up to the March 25, we've incurred around 100k of cost, and that was with a reduced commercial traffic. So we are obviously trying to minimize this cost, and we've in 3.44 we indicated that we think we could go closer, obviously, to the 65k in terms of cost, but that will depend on cost that we have to incur to comply with the Port Marine Safety Code. So for instance, if the weather is bad and a buoy is moving, we have to relocate the buoy, we have to pay for this cost. So there are costs which are not be under our control, and we will have to incur them. But there are indication there we should be around between 65 and 100, and that's why we need to obviously update the Financial Resources Committee on a regular basis if there are any variation on this cost.
Yep.
Thank you. So again, if I'm reading this correctly, until that time comes and there is the approval for the harbour revision order, we are still open for traffic, and vessels may still come, and presumably there will be increased costs to the council for each vessel that might arrive over and above because I think the cost you're talking about is the cost that we will have to incur after the revision order. Is that correct? And there could still be additional costs until such times as the revision order is in place.
That's correct. There's a cost that we have to incur. I mean, the flip side of it, if we have a vessel coming in, we have an income as well. So we are recouping some of the costs through the income from the vessel. So there's an element of balancing, and we try obviously to achieve neutral cost. So if there's a vessel coming in, we try to recover as much as we can from that, and even more to make a profit, into that. But that would depend on number of vessels. There are a number of ongoing costs that have to be met, irrespective of the number of vessels coming to the harbour or not.
Thank you. Bailey Ahern, do you have another question?
Yes. Paragraph 3.1.3 talks about the long-term commercial leases would need to be bought out. That's Common Good Fund. Where's the money going to come from to buy out the leases? Is that going to be from the council or through the Common Good? And that's going to be a considerable reduction of income from the Common Good. So there'll be unlikely that will possibly will be agreed by the Common Good. And we've also discussed about the bridge going across to the harbour to Moncrieff Island before, and that was rejected because of cost.
Again, Serge, thank you.
This is really to link to the future use of the harbour. So the description there is what could happen, if effectively the harbour is not a commercial, harbour with vessel over 24 with a need for storage. There's quite a need of logistics. So if the need for logistics are less, needed, it's less needed there. Obviously, from a properties, people who have properties there or leasing property will obviously start to change the use of these properties. They've started already, but it's a very long-term vision of that area, and the leases that we have on that area are very long-term leases. So that will not happen tomorrow. It will take a long time, or it will take a current occupier of a building or a lease to effectively resign from the lease, or to change the use of the lease to make that transition as such. Regarding the bridge, it was an aspiration, at the time, but I think now the focus is on the Perth City Development and Design Framework with the Harbour Quarter, which is identifying different elements which can happen, with an area. That's the type of things we need to focus on going forward, from what was envisaged at the beginning, of that.
Okay, thank you. Are there any further questions?
Yeah, I've got another question going back to the bylaws. Given that we are no longer going to be responsible, or you hope you're not going to be responsible for it, is it worth putting in bylaws or requesting a bylaw now for the control of jet skis? Originally, we were going to try and control it as a harbour board, and put in a framework that we could give voluntary. But given there's going to be no responsibility in the future, if everything goes ahead as you plan, is it not worth applying now to put in bylaws to control the jet skis and then prevent an accident that nearly happened last week with the users at Willowgate?
In regard to the jet ski issue that's going on, there is a voluntary code of conduct that we have had most sign up to, but we do know that they're not always abiding to the sort of the speed limit that's in the actual bylaws. The bylaws actually got it in there. I think what would probably be a proposal or something to look about forward would be to zoning areas with pilotage directions, which could be done with this paper by continue to have a statute harbour authority. So we would have the powers through our harbour master to be able to enforce speed limits and actually have powers to impose sanctions on people doing that. So I think that would be the one option to look forward to controlling that effort.
Okay, I've got no more since a lot of mine have been asked by others.
Sorry, I didn't quite catch that last bit. You've got no more?
Some of the questions I had have been asked by others.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Okay, thank you. Okay, so there being no further, there is a further question, sorry, Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Convener. I notice on page 100, as part of the timeline, and just for comment, I think in relation to that timeline in Appendix 2, a lot of the early comments in that talk about a harbour revision order, which I think should actually be a harbour closure order, because I don't think we've talked about the revision order until now, effectively, if I'm picking up the procedure correctly. But going back to page 100, so I'll scroll down. On the 30th of March 2025 there's a comment there that says at the beginning of the month a capital dredge application was submitted to Marine Scotland on behalf of Calport for a licence. And I just wonder what discussions we've had with Calport regarding these proposals to change from closure to revision, and how this may impact that proposal. I presume it not be a cheap thing to dredge it, but if we're not going to have vessels longer than 24 metres, is it, as I say, have we had discussions with Calport about these proposals? Thank you.
Serge?
There have been constant discussion with the Calport as the currently only harbour user, and because we have to maintain the compliance and we have to work with obviously the users of the harbour, we've been cooperating with them on the two elements, which was the border control post, which needed to be developed, for fish meal that the Calport is importing. So there was a change in legislation in terms of logistics, so we had to work with them on that we've achieved with them. And they were also willing to dredge part of the harbour entrance, and we worked with them on that as well, although they bear the cost of both border control post and dredging, but they wanted to do that as a commercial entity, and they're fully aware that the council decision made in February on 23 and where we are in terms of the process. They've been asked obviously to kept fully informed when there's a decision from the council, or when we will go into consultation when we have the go ahead from Transport Scotland. So we will keep that collaboration and communication ongoing.
Okay, thank you. And further question, Councillor Duff.
Thanks for your forbearance, Convener. Just further up on that timeline, on page 99, on the 25th of September 2024, it says at that point, Transport Scotland indicated that the pursuance of a closure order for the function of the, for a functioning harbour had not occurred previously in the UK, making this a more complex and novel request. That was fully 18 months, if not more, after we had taken the decision to close the harbour. And I wonder, what discussions had been held with Transport Scotland prior to the original decision back in February 2023, I think it was. And why did it take so long for us to understand that this was the first time that this had ever been done?
Well, obviously, we were in contact with Transport Scotland before February 23, when the business plan was prepared and so on. That wasn't highlighted to us, but I think at the time when we started to engage with them, they were not so sure about how our request will be dealt with. But in their guidance, which they have published, they talk about closure and revision, and both have different, similar processes as such. So, you would assume potentially that if it's in their guidance, they would have obviously had that to do before, but obviously that was not the case. They didn't have to use the closure process before that, and that became clear going through the process with them, and that's crystallized in September 24.
Sorry, Convener, if I could just ask one further question. I think I don't see anybody else coming in. So just to recap then, so in terms of, we're effectively going back to square one then. I think that's basically the case. And if we agree to go for a harbour and revision order, we'll need to go out to consultation again, etc., etc. And it's really starting the process all over again. Is that correct?
No, because we didn't start the consultation on the closure, so and we gathered a lot of information. So effectively, we've got the draft order ready, effectively, to go ahead on the basis of potential agreement today. So I think that the timeline now will be quite short in terms of between the decision today and the issue of at the start of the consultation, the 42 days consultation that is a mandatory period.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm now going to move the report. The closure of a commercial harbour, as is obvious today, is not an easy option for this council or any council to take, but we have to balance the merits of continuing to run a loss-making harbour that is a drain on this council's finances against the benefits that may ensue through regeneration for leisure, tourism and nature conservation. Discussions with Transport Scotland have concluded that the best course would be for the council to retain the statutory harbour authority duty, but cease the competent harbour authority duties, which will mean excluding commercial vessels over 24 metres. If agreed, this will go to thorough public consultation and will be submitted to Scottish ministers for approval in due course. Can I also acknowledge the significant contribution made by the Harbour Board and its dedicated members over the past few years, and it's clear today of the passion that they have for the role that they've performed. Their efforts have been invaluable, and I would like to extend this committee's thanks to them for their work. I'm happy to accept the recommendations in the report and move the paper for approval. And can I ask Councillor Welsh to second the report?
Thank you, Convener, and I'm happy to second the report.
Okay. Do members have comments? And I see Bailey Ahern, you have a comment.
Thank you very much, Convener. Whilst I remain chair of the Harbour Board for at least the next 3 or 4 minutes, I want to disagree with aspects of this report. including the method of removing the board. I still don't agree with the officers' recommendations that it can be done by this committee, but there we are. I'm also not happy about being not consulted, and I'm not just talking about this paper, I've been talking about the last 3 years that the board hasn't sat. We've not been consulted once or had a board meeting just to update us about what's going on. It's been done through emails. I hope the harbour remains safe without ongoing scrutiny from the board. And I hope that if we must maintain a harbour master, and I hope nothing serious happens there, because as a board we were well on top of what we were legally required to do and what we would do in the event of an incident. So it's no surprise that I don't support this report. Thank you.
Sorry, okay, Councillor Duff.
Thank you, convener. This is a sorry tale, I have to say. 2 years and 4 months ago, this council voted to close Perth Harbour, and 2 years and 4 months later, we're advised somewhat belatedly that this is a first in the UK, and it's too difficult for Transport Scotland to conclude this, and perhaps we should consider a harbour revision order instead. And the decision to accept that advice, objections could still mean that this takes 6 to 18 months' time before we can rid ourselves of only some of the responsibilities in terms of running the harbour. However, we will still have to retain certain key responsibilities for that, and I hear Billy Hearn's concerns at making sure that these operations continue to run safely. But it will have an ongoing cost to us of at least £65,000 per annum, and we could incur further heavy costs over and above the £600,000 that it's really cost us in terms of lost savings and increased expenditure in the last couple of years. So, we're not out of the woods yet in relation to the harbour situation. So it is unfortunate that the way this has developed over the past 2 years. Transport Scotland have certainly not covered themselves in glory in relation to the way and the speed with which they have dealt with their situation and the various requests for information and speed in relation to this, and I'm sure that has been noted. Thanks very much.
Thank you, and Councillor Cuthbert.
Thank you, convener. On a slightly lighter note, I just wanted to say I was delighted to see that the Fairmaid tugboat had been sold for £500,000. So well done to whoever sold it.
Thank you. Thank you for that comment. And I'm sure the officers responsible will welcome your comment in that regard. Councillor Lane.
Thanks, convener. And yep, and you can see the passion. This decision was taken at full council. Again, not an easy decision to take, but we continually in this chamber face difficult decisions. I'd like to thank the officers for the work that they've done and working with Transport Scotland to get to the position we are. Everybody can agree it's taken a long time, but there was a lot of attempts to put somebody on the moon for the first time. So if you're doing something for the first time, there's going to be setbacks. So I just want to thank the officers for their work in doing this and being able to find a suitable and, it seems to me, sensible compromise of what we passed in 2023. So I'd just like to thank you all, and if Serge can pass that on the team. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. If there are no other comments and if there are no amendments, can we agree the recommendations as set out in the report? So you'd like your dissent noted, Bailey Ahern?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you very much for that. And without further ado then, can I hand over to my Vice Convener, Councillor Welsh, to take the following 2 items on the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Convener. Item 8, school exclusion zone update. I'd like to ask Darryl McEwen, our senior engineer in the traffic and network management team, to introduce the report. Darryl, please.
Convener and councillors, the report sets out the background to the school exclusion zone programme. It was originally introduced in 2016. It then talks about presents information on the second phase of that in 2022 through the Spaces for People programme, and gives details of the effectiveness and the compliance rates of those new exclusion zones. The report contains information on the additional measures that are required or that are being recommended to ensure better compliance, and in particular changes to the exclusion zone at the Viewlands Primary School area. The last part of the report includes information on the proposals for a communication strategy to encourage better compliance in future years. I'm happy to take questions on the report.
Thank you, Darryl. And I'd ask questions to be put in the chat, please. And I can see that I have a question from Dave Cuthbert. 2 questions. I'm happy to take them both, Dave. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Convener. Bit of background. Kinross Primary School has been listed for work outside the school to create an exclusion zone, if you like. It was priority number 8 in 2022 and remains a priority now. It is the biggest primary school in Perth and Kinross, and because of all the new houses in the area, the patterns of people moving, the number of pupils, etc., has changed considerably. So my question is, I wasn't aware of this school exclusion zone project, if you like, and I just wondered, how did schools get selected for this?
Darryl, can I ask you to respond, please?
Yeah, the project that Councillor Cuthbert refers to on the road safety projects list is not for school exclusion zone, it's for school keep clear markings outside the school. Now, in answer to that, the drawing has been circulated to the elected members, and the drawing has also been issued to Tayside Contracts. We're just waiting for confirmation from them as to when those markings will be put in place. The exclusion zone is an access restriction rather than a parking restriction. It prevents unauthorised access in the vicinity of the zone while the zone is in operation. How we decided which schools would be appropriate for the exclusion zones: prior to 2016, when the first phase of the project was introduced, we were invited by East Lothian Council to view their new school exclusion zone at Haddington. And we went along, there was a site visit there, Perth and Kinross Council and a number of other local authorities who were interested in introducing similar measures in their own area. At that time, we did a preliminary assessment of all the schools. We were looking at road layouts that were similar to the Haddington site, because we were able to use that as a comparison site. And that was when we introduced Arngask and Burlton, Cooper Angus and Luncardy primary schools. And part of the reason why we were aware of those schemes was because there were other pedestrian measures been put in, particularly at Cooper Angus and at Luncardy. We were widening footways, we were putting in new cycle paths. That was part of the trial, which was successful, as detailed in the report. When it came to COVID and the increase in pedestrian activity, we did a fuller review of all the primary school sites, and they were split into 3 different categories. There's a green, amber and red. Green, those sites where the road layout lent itself to the inclusion of an exclusion zone. Amber, where sites where perhaps additional measures would be required, and red, sites where it was not suitable. And those were mostly schools that fronted on to a main traffic route, such as, let's say, Station Road in Kinross, where the volume of traffic, the speed of traffic and the level of activity in the area meant that it would be difficult to ensure compliance with an exclusion zone, an access restriction like that. The schools that were introduced in 2022, the funding came from the Spaces for People project from Scottish Government. Most of those sites were the schools that had been identified as green on that assessment criteria. Viewlands was one, Blairgowrie were schools that were identified in amber, and there were additional measures proposed to improve the pedestrian facilities. I would have to say that looking at the road layout at Kinross, we would not consider that to be suitable for an access restriction such as the school exclusion zone.
You want to go ahead?
Thank you. I take that on board. My second question really, it's not looking at exclusion zones, but I've been trying to find the safer routes to school plans that were produced, I don't know, a decade ago, roughly, I think. Because what's happened in Kinross is possibly the same in a whole lot of other communities. We've had new housing estates with 300 plus houses, whatever, built. And that means that the sort of desire lines, the routes to get to the schools have changed. And it's really to ask whether this committee could commission some sort of investigation into the schools generally to see if those plans have changed since the safer route to school plans were put together, because certainly in Kinross that has changed and there are needs for additional safer routes. So it's really a question of whether you might consider as a committee to look at that.
For the purpose of today, we're also looking at an update on the school exclusion zones. I think the points you make, are pertinent, and it's something I think we should try and follow up with officers, because it will feed into, for example, things like the sort of local development plan and that active travel piece as well. So I think we'll note those comments and look to try and see where it's most appropriate to bring that forward. Okay. And I have a question from Councillor Keith Allen.
Thank you, Vice Convener. I think we've recognised, and the police position is quite clear, that they will not routinely enforce restrictions. We've got 20-mile-an-hour restrictions going up throughout the whole of Perth and Kinross, and we know that they won't be enforced. Just how successful can we make these if we're not going to be supported by the police?
Daniel, please.
I think Councillor Allen, what you say is correct. The police's position is that they won't routinely enforce. They will respond to community concerns as resources permit. That is their position regarding the school exclusion zones and the 20 and 30 mile per hour limits. We know that the Police Scotland have been supportive in the school exclusion zone. We always know when the police are in the vicinity, usually for one of three reasons. The police themselves inform us. Social media advises us that. Some people say it's great, other people they put it out as a warning. And usually we get a flurry of activity, new requests for new permits for people who want access into the exclusion zones. The exclusion zone, like a speed limit, should be relevant to the road environment and should be largely self-regulating. Sites such as Balhousie Street, where we've indicated in the report, or Gilton or Darngask, where you've got a single access road, the compliance rates are generally good because the road layout means there's very little through traffic. Where there are problems are sites such as Viewlands and Blairgowrie, where you've got multiple access points. In discussion with our communications teams and with the head teachers, we're keen to develop a communication strategy to make parents and residents more aware of the exclusion zone, the reason why they are there, which is primarily about road safety. So it's a long-term educational initiative to try and change people's perspective on how they use the road. It's not a short-term fix. And it is going to take time, but similar to campaigns nationally that we've had for seatbelt use or for drink driving, it needs to be a much more consistent and coordinated approach. We've been in discussion with our colleagues in other roads authorities through Road Safety Scotland, which is the national body that deals with road safety education, to see whether it can be promoted at a national level as well as at a local level. One of the drawbacks to that, or one of the stumbling blocks, is that not all local authorities have exclusion zones, so it's not applicable in all areas, but we're hoping that we'll be able to get much wider information out there rather than purely relying on enforcement. Enforcement is still a tool, that is still available to us, but a lot of it has got to be through education.
Thank you. You want to respond?
Thanks, Darrell. I think it's fair to say that the safety of our children and in those areas is paramount. So much as we may not get the support from the police, I think it's still fair to say that you should get the full support to do what you're doing in those areas. Thank you.
Thank you. And I've got a question from Councillor John Duff. John.
Thanks, Vice Keenan. It's picking up on the area that Councillor Allen has just discussed. I wonder how if we are monitoring the compliance with these exclusion zones. As we've heard, Police Scotland have admitted that they can't routinely enforce these zones, and it's unfortunate that Police Scotland don't have enough resources to carry out a wide range of their duties. But perhaps if we evidence the level of non-compliance through monitoring them, then they would be able to target what little resources they do have at this problem. Thank you.
Darryl, any comments?
Yes, whenever the exclusion zones were introduced in 2022, we did some on-site monitoring to try and determine how many vehicles were entering the zone legitimately. The wording within the legislation says that the driver has to have a permit. It doesn't say that the permit has to be on display on the vehicle. So some people, when they were stopped or challenged at the school gate, were able to produce the permit. So it was difficult from just a site observation to actually calculate how many vehicles legitimately were using those streets within the zone. We can check through number plate recognition. We can check, well, like that against the permits. We don't have any software for that at the moment. That's a time-consuming exercise, but it can be done as almost like as a spot check. Again, that's part of the discussion nationally to see whether software would be available for that, but there are all sorts of legal issues regarding that. But I think in our communications strategy, in working with the schools, that's something that we would seek to develop. I said it twice.
Thank you, Darryl.
Just a quick follow-up on that. Just in relation to your comment, then Darryl, then would some changes to the legislation assist in being able to enforce compliance with the legislation in relation to this, in terms of things like having to display your permit when you enter the zone and so forth?
Yes, we've been in discussion with Transport Scotland about that, about changes to the legislation, including the likes of automatic number plate recognition. But we're at a very early stage in that, and that would need to be led at a national level rather than local level.
Thank you. Hopefully that not take 2.5 years. Thank you.
Blair, I know you've got a comment.
Yeah, it was just to say that down in England, the council have the ability to enforce their school exclusion zones through camera enforcement, but unfortunately don't have that legislation within Scotland at the minute. So nationally, if that legislation came in, it would give us a lot more power to enforce. And I also believe that the fines from them go directly into council pockets rather than national like police fines.
I think, taking your point, Councillor Duff, that certainly that is an area I think that should be explored further. We have a team of exemplar parking wardens that perform at a very high level, and I think it is worthwhile asking those questions. I live in a school zone, exclusion zone myself, and I do think actually closer engagement with the teaching staff and involving the pupils, because certainly what I observe is it's a significant number of parents who are dropping young people off at the school that are actually a part of the challenge that we need to resolve here too. So that whole safety, and the whole point of this work is to ensure pupil safety and safety of others in and around school area. I think we could be looking more closely within the school area, which obviously we are more in control of. Thank you. I've got a question from Councillor Colin Stewart.
Thank you, Vice Convener. So it was specifically about the Gilton School Exclusion Zone which doesn't require any proposed changes, but there's mention of the pedestrian improvements in terms of the Puffin crossing in the centre of the village, and I just wondered, the wording in the recommendations is that the additional measures to improve pedestrian facilities are subject to consultation and available budgets. I was just wanting to check whether there was an available budget and whether that work in Gilton was timetabled, or when if there is available budget, when it's timetabled for.
Darryl, please.
Yeah, a number of the measures that we put in to improve pedestrian facilities are not directly linked to the school exclusion zone. So on Gilton on the main street, there's been a request for some time to put in a pedestrian crossing. That was also linked in with the cross-tie link road mitigation measures. But we have similar examples at other sites as well. Whether the school exclusion zone project progressed or not, we would still be wanting to upgrade footways, put in signalised crossings. We have been working on the design for the Gilton site. We're looking at the available budget within our Puffin crossing programme. And when we've done an assessment and we've done a scoring system, clearly those ones that are linked to schools and provide a safe pedestrian access to the schools rank much higher. We would like to have included the Puffin crossing in Gilton on a raised table or a ramp, because that would act as a further speed reduction measure and would mirror the ramps that we have at either entrance to the village. Traffic surveys are all programmed to see if there are any changes in vehicle speeds, traffic volumes. So it will probably depend on the outcome of those traffic figures, what the design of the Puffin crossing would be. But there is funding available for it. It's not programmed in this current financial year, but it would be our intention, if funding is available and we have the staff resources, that it would be installed this financial year.
Okay, thank you. And a question from Councillor Stephen Carr.
Thank you. Just a quick question in relation to the Viewlands exclusion zone, and more specifically the section of Hughes Road to the west of the school. As part of the exclusion zone, this road was shortened, the width of it was shortened by the installation of a pathway which rarely seems to get used, but does cause a lot of problems with traffic travelling in opposite directions due to drop-offs and more specifically collection times where cars would be sitting stationary for a longer period. As part of the exclusion zone at Viewlands, the adjustments that you're making, would those adjustments include removal of that path? I see that there's a Puffin crossing going in to increase the width of the road and to help resolve some of these traffic issues along that section of road.
Darryl, please.
The footway on Ferries Road predated the school exclusion zone, and the elected members for the ward had been petitioning for that for quite some time. The introduction of the school exclusion zone gave us the opportunity to progress that and to bring that forward. Ferries Road was a wide road and could easily have accommodated a row of parked vehicles and 2 lanes of traffic. By narrowing the road down, we still have room for 2 lanes of traffic, but by reducing the road width, you help to suppress vehicle speeds. We have no plans to remove that footway. You'd commented that it was rarely used. We know that at school time it is extensively used. Outside of school time, perhaps not to the same level, but it is used as a drop-off and pick-up point. So we have no plans to reduce it. When the footway was being considered, the introduction of a Puffin crossing was not part of the discussion with the local community, because there had previously been a school crossing patroller operating there. Now that post has been vacant for some time, and in more recent years we've had requests from parents and from other sections in the community for a controlled crossing facility, a push button crossing facility. That's not on the section where the new footway was built. That's more likely to be on the southern section down towards Oakbank Road. The traffic congestion that we see at school time with, as you say, the vehicles sitting and waiting for periods of time is similar to what we see at other locations. And while it does cause difficulties for some vehicles. It does help to suppress vehicle speeds. We don't necessarily see that as being a road safety issue. That's more a traffic management issue. But we have been liaising with the bus operators because we were concerned that the narrowing of the road could cause delays to the bus timetable. That hasn't been raised as an issue for us by the bus operators, but there's always the opportunity available to us that we could put in waiting restrictions if we needed to in order to keep the road clear for the free flow of traffic.
Okay, thank you. Stephen, are you happy with it?
I would disagree with some of the comments regarding extensive use of that path. The drop-offs are on the path on the opposite side of the road, and pupils will then have to cross the road to get to that path without any crossing or assistance. Where the puff and crossing, I think, is a good idea because they can then walk down the path. But I would disagree with the extensive use of that path at school times. And I would say it is a big problem with vehicles travelling at drop-off and pick-off times.
Okay, thank you. And question from Councillor Willie Robertson.
Thank you, Vice Convener. Darrell, as you'll know, I'm a great fan of school exclusion zones, but can I ask you about, they're only as effective as the enforcement of the regulations that apply there. And it gives me great concern the fact that the police don't enforce like people parking in double yellow lines or parking on the pavements at schools and just drive past when they see clear breaches of the regulations. Is there any work been done to work with the police to get them to actually enforce traffic light regulations? If they did, I think it would make a huge difference. Currently, they turned a blind eye to people parking in double yellow lines or parking on pavements. Is there any work being done to try and get them to change their attitude to this?
Thank you. Darrell?
Yeah, we meet regularly with the police through the local Perth and Kinross Road Safety Partnership, through the Tayside Road Safety Forum, and through the local Road Safety Forum, which is actually a regional forum. There's a lot of discussion with police. I can't comment on their operational activity. That's a matter entirely for them, but we do encourage them at every opportunity. I would say, as does every council, to have a more visible presence. In relation to school exclusion zones, we've often felt that a regular visual presence, the very fact that the police are there, would help to influence driver behaviour. They don't necessarily have to book people, but I think if they were there regularly, people would become aware that it could be enforced, whereas at the moment it is very piecemeal and it's quite infrequent. But yeah, we will continue to work with Police Scotland, and we will continue to encourage them to participate in the exclusion zone programme.
Thank you, Darrell. I've got one last question from Councillor Ling. Sorry, Blair, go ahead.
Sorry, just to come in and say that parking regulations in Perth and Kinross are decriminalised. So as far as I'm aware, it's only our parking attendants that can enforce the parking on double yellow lines and also the pavement parking. I don't believe that the police are able to enforce that now. That is decriminalised.
Thank you for clarifying that, Blair. And as I say, we've got one last question from Councillor Grantling. Thank you.
Yeah. Am I mistaken, or do we not have council drop-ins with senior police officers, etc., that occur quite often? So would that not be the opportunity for elected members, if they were wanting to raise something directly instead of going through the road safety team with Police Scotland, if they have got concerns of some of the the exclusion zones in their area?
From my perspective, I think that's a very good observation. These sessions are available, and this is obviously a pertinent area. So, but Darrell, do you have any sort of comments on that?
I don't, Vice Convener. I wasn't aware that there were those regular meetings between councillors and Police Scotland.
Go ahead.
Yeah, just I'm sure that they're monthly at least, and it's a good opportunity to go and raise local concerns. I think it's easier for local concerns rather than coming from officers, come from directly from people who are got a post bag or who live in the area and witness it. So instead of putting extra work towards the road safety team, I think elected members could take that on themselves. I'm reliably informed the next meeting's next Thursday, so can everybody who's asking questions today can attend it.
Thank you for that additional information, and I think I would commend elected members to follow up with that if there are particular areas in their local ward that they feel they have concerns with. I've got what, and if I can have this as a last question from Councillor Chris Ahern.
Sorry, it was a comment on, it was an answer to that question. So as chair of the Community Justice and Safety Partnership, it is something that's brought up certainly in our delivery meetings that we have. Councillor Lane is right, there is a monthly meeting and it's next week. And I have just in the last 2 weeks been out on patrol with the roads policing team. And it is something that if they're requested, they will go and look at. They're quite aware, and the comments were made that it is, I think from yourself, that it's people that live locally tend to cause the problem, and they will go if the amount of police on duty at that time will allow. So yeah, but there is plenty of opportunity for elected members either through that meeting monthly or through the partnership to put the questions to the police.
I appreciate that comment, and I think it, effectively reinforces, there is an opportunity for elected members really to work closely with both the schools and the police to look to try and minimise and improve road safety and safety of pupils and others around the schools wherever possible. Thank you. If there are no further questions, I'd like to move the report. This report provides committee with an update on the school exclusion zone programme and a review on the effectiveness of the zones at each of the existing locations. The report seeks approval to create permanent traffic regulation orders for Blairgowrie Community Campus and at Gilton, Inchview and Kinlochrannoch primary schools. It proposes consultation is undertaken to review the extents of the zones at Viewlands with additional road safety measures here and also at Blairgowrie, Gilton and Tulloch. It also recommends an experimental traffic order be raised to trial an exclusion zone at Tulloch Primary School. I'm happy to accept the recommendations in the report and move the paper for approval. Can I ask Councillor Drysdale to second the report?
Yes, I'm very happy to second. Thank you.
We've had a number of comments on the report already in advance of this particular section, but if there's no other comments at this stage, and I don't see any in the chat, sorry, if there's no other further comments, can we agree the recommendations as set out in the report? Thank you. Thank you. We have in item 9 the active travel prioritisation delivery plan, and can I ask Blair Watt, the traffic and network management team member, to introduce the report? And I should have thanked Darrell for his contributions both to the report and responding to questions and comments. So thank you, Darrell. Blair, please go ahead.
Thank you, Vice Convener. This report provides committee with an update on the active travel projects delivered in 24-25 and an update on the changes in active travel funding. It also introduces the active travel prioritisation delivery plan. The report details how the previous Cycling and Walking and Safer Routes grant has been replaced by an active travel infrastructure fund, Tier 1, and due to a change in the methodology has resulted in a reduction in funding for Perfect and Ross. It highlights that in 24-25 nearly £1 million was spent on a number of different projects in active travel, including new shared use paths, drop curbs, new footways, cycle parking and signalised junctions throughout the council area. These projects have been well received by the local community. The report introduces and seeks approval of the active travel prioritisation delivery plan so that it can be used to progress active travel infrastructure projects in Perfect and Ross. The delivery plan sets out a methodology and scoring criteria to rank requested active travel projects. The plan aligns with Transport Scotland's aims for active travel and should lead to more successful Tier 2 funding applications. The current projects on the list have been identified from existing active travel master plans or have been raised with the Traffic and Network team through the Road Safety Priority List. The list will be managed by the Active Travel Coordinator within Traffic and Network, who will be responsible for adding, amending, or in some cases, removing projects from the list. This will ensure a consistent approach to the scoring of projects within the prioritised list. In conclusion, the implementation of the Active Travel Prioritisation Delivery Plan will create a prioritised list of projects for introduction through active travel budgets. Progression of the projects will be delegated to the strategic lead for environment and infrastructure from the prioritised list within available budgets. I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you, Blair. We have a number of questions, and can I start with Councillor Keith Allen, please?
Thank you, Vice Convener, and thanks, Blair. In your proposal for the Active Travel Prioritisation and Delivery Plan at 4.2, it talks about a Perth Cycle Network Master Plan 2018, which aims to create a coherent cycle network in Perth. Now, I travel through Stirling regularly and it's cycle paths all over the place. Now, whether I agree with them or not is immaterial. Can you tell me, what's the end date? Have we started? What's the report on progress? Thank you.
So this delivery plan is effectively putting, this report and the prioritisation delivery plan is effectively taking the projects from the Perth City Network plan and creating a delivery plan for them. So prioritising them, picking the ranked projects, and that's what we will look to spend our available budgets on. With, you know, we will need some external grant funding to progress that. The actual Perth Cycle Network Master Plan wasn't a report carried about by us. It was done by the transport planning team. So I'm familiar with it, but not the ins and outs of it.
Would it be possible to get an update? Thank you.
Yes, I can ask our transport planning colleagues to update you with that.
And I've got a question, two questions, but if I can do just the first question, please, from Councillor Stuart Donaldson.
Thank you, Vice Convener. Blair, thanks for the report. Can I turn to the ARUP summary report? Could I ask, are we at a position that we can actually see excerpts? I don't think we need to see the whole detailed report, but on specific projects and the criteria that's been applied. And along with that, on the criteria, it sets out in the ARUP report, is there, though, the length of time a project's been outstanding for? And I'm thinking in particular here, and I'm being local, on the Comrie to Crieff core path. And that's now at least 11 years, in actual fact, reality 14 years. Is that a factor that applies as criteria, or it seems not?
Thanks, Councillor Donaldson. So this is the report. There is no further report to this. This is the only report we have got from ARUP. In terms of the criteria used, that's on page 5 and 2.5. It's deliverability, social deprivation, potential users, public transport, safety, connectivity, air quality management, and rurality. It's very high level at this stage. And again, I think an important thing is this is not a waiting list per se. This is a prioritised delivery list. So the length of time that a project has been on the list or talked about, it's not really factored into the delivery plan. This is taking each individual route and it's looking at it on its pros and some of its cons, and then it's prioritising it based on that. So the higher a project scores in terms of the criteria, so the pros of a project, the higher it will rank on this prioritised delivery plan.
Stuart, are you happy with it? Sorry, I'm just going back to my other screen, and I have a question from Bailey Chris Ahern.
Thank you very much, Vice Convener. My question is, I just want clarity on paragraph 3.9 on page 121, where it says staff costs of £86,049 were claimed against Tier 1 funding. This is a reduction from previous years due to staff redeployment to national and local priorities such as the introduction of the National Pavement Parking Ban, CTLR mitigation measures and National 20-mile-hour speed limit strategy. Can I ask, are we funding council staff to perform work for the Scottish Government and national projects? And is that then, if we are, is that having an effect on the manning of our traffic and network team within the council?
Well, thank you, Bailey Ahern. So the staff costs specifically are in 3.9 are related to the recharge back to the active travel grant funding that we get. In terms of the delivery of the national plans, yes, traffic and network staff time is being, for these delivery of these national strategies, is being absorbed within the costs of the traffic network team, and that obviously it prioritises. We've had to prioritise these national schemes to carry out that over other priorities. I think that's fair to say. We've got colleagues from the traffic and network team who can also maybe help me with this one if need be.
Are there any of the other, Craig, do you want to comment at all? Or?
Yeah, I'm just going to back up what Blair was saying, just that yeah, ultimately the national strategies, we've had to allocate staff resources against that. But in saying that, it's not necessarily schemes that we disagree with. I think that we've been doing a lot of work with other partners such as the Fire Brigade, the Police, the Scottish Government on safe systems, which is looking at different measures that all tie in together, and we'd fully support both the national strategies of the 20 mile per hour and the pavement parking, and see the benefit of both.
Is that?
Yes, right. Just so the police and fire brigade are obviously a national body. We're not. We're here for Perth and Kinross. So if we've got officers working on national projects, so I take it it's for our element of that, or if we're paying staff to actually do work on behalf of the Scottish Government then?
My understanding is it's on our element of these projects from a delivery perspective. An officer can...
Yeah, just to clarify, it's the safe systems is basically looking at the overall big picture, that maybe there'll be the road environment which we can influence. There'll be response times that the fire brigade, the police can respond to, and it's all putting these different projects together that all look at the bigger picture. But yeah, it's the staff time on our elements of that, which is the national speed limits. Obviously pavement parking is slightly different, but it's encouraging active travel and assisting the safety of pedestrians and vulnerable users.
Go on, Blip.
Yeah, just to say that it's our staff time to implement the national strategies within Perth and Kinross. So that's the 20 mile per hours and everyone's ward here pretty much, and also the pavement parking ban, which has been implemented.
Thank you. And Councillor Grantley.
Yes, and obviously we get funded to do these things, and that's why we've got teachers at Perth and Kinross that are implementing national strategies, and we do UK strategies as well that we have to take part of. So it's not unusual at all that PKC funds their part of any national strategy. Would you say that was fair? But really my main question was, can I ask that your team works closely, and the Environment and Infrastructure Committee works closely with the Climate Change and Sustainability Committee, especially on this, because I think there's a lot of overlap there. So if some of your briefing sessions in that are if the conveners are happy to work with the other team committee in that, I think it would make a better product at the end of the day.
Yeah, if I can just come in there and assure Councillor Lane that steps are being taken to ensure that there is close cooperation between the two committees moving forward.
Thanks.
Go on, sorry.
Just to say that we took this to the convener of E&I and also the convener and vice convener of the climate change. I think it's fair to say that we're both conveners were supportive of this piece of work.
Thanks, Blair.
And
I'm really disappointed on see Councillor Watt asking some difficult questions here.
He was well briefed.
I've got a question from Councillor Colin Stewart.
I'm just looking up something. Could you come back to me?
Okay, you, without putting any pressure on you, Colin, you're the last remaining question. Oh, sorry, am I missing?
Saved by Councillor Donaldson.
Councillor, yes, please, Stuart. Sorry, that's my fault. I appreciate that.
That'll give you 5 minutes.
Right. So, Councillor Stewart, you'd like me to go on for a little bit. What I do want to ask is, again, this is Strathallan, but looking at the list here, and it can be amended, it's going to be developed, and I'm concerned on Crieff Comrie, but there's also, it's Crieff to Mewthel, and I know the Mewthel Development Trust, and that's in Strathallan Ward, have put in quite a bit of work into the second part of that path to link up the village with Crieff. And in particular for active travel, it's of real benefit to folk in Mewthel, yet it's not even mentioned here. Is there a reason, for that?
Yeah, I think it's important in kind of section 1.1 about the project background of this. This is just a start. This is not an extensive list. This is just what we've pulled together from existing active travel master plans, strategies, and some of the projects that have been brought to us through the ward priority list. The Transport Scotland set some pretty tight deadlines around applications for Tier 2 funding this year. So we commissioned this piece of work kind of late in the calendar year last year, so that we could get an idea of the projects, the types of projects, and the criteria that we would want to submit to Transport Scotland, so that we had our spoon in the jam jar for the funding for this financial year. If we delayed it further and put every single project that we would have have missed the Tier 2 funding for this year. And then we would have been another year behind. We wouldn't be applying until next financial year to get funding. So we know there's more projects to go in here. We are in the process of recruiting our active travel coordinator, and they will start to populate this with projects, so that the likes of your Crieff to Mewthel and other projects, Mewthel Tochter Ardor, they will start to populate this list to a certain extent. One thing to note about that is though that they may go into it, but they may not score highly. They're more, that's more of kind of a tourism route, whereas Transport Scotland are trying to build infrastructure, encourage infrastructure for everyday journey. So to encourage modal shift, transformational change, to encourage more people to use cycling for everyday journeys. So while it may go into the list, it might not rank that highly. So other projects may be prioritised for delivery above that.
Just quickly follow up. All I would say is I do know the Mewthel Development Trust, the people that were leading on that project, had been talking quite extensively in the past to Sustrans. So I think that there's got to be more on that. Okay, thanks.
Colin, are you in a position to go ahead?
Yeah, thanks very much, Councillor Donaldson. Thanks, Vice Convener. What I was looking up was where the list of routes for the projects in the prioritised list of projects in Appendix 2 had come from. I have a community group who previously were in contact with Sustrans about an active travel route from Scone into the city centre. I noticed that there is a Scone to the city centre one here using the A94. I just wondered how flexible this list of projects was, because I think my community group might have been talking to the wrong people in the council, and there's an alternative project which might actually fit better in here.
Yep, Blair, Colin raises a good point, and it's been flagged before through Skooning Community Council. So yeah, your response on that would be appreciated.
Thanks, Councillor Stewart. I think what's important to note about these projects is that they're not a defined line from point A to point B. Sorry, they are effectively the concept to a route. And through our engagement with Transport Scotland and Tier 2 funding, there's three aspects to the Tier 2 funding. There's feasibility and concept, feasibility and business case, concept design, detailed design, and then there's actual construction costs. So some of these projects we might be bidding for construction costs. Other projects, a lot of the Scone to Scone Airport, Scone to City Centre, that's probably very much a feasibility concept design stage. We'll be applying to Transport Scotland for that to come up with a route to then take it through that detailed concept design, detailed design, and then construction process. So it's very much the theory of taking a project from concept all the way through that process of, and that'll include community engagement and community consultation as well. It's just trying to rank the projects that we know we've got from the existing strategies and master plans, and then starting to say, right, this is the priority, this is what we want to work on, and then taking it through that process.
Thanks. The particular project I'm thinking of was actually quite far through the process in terms of, I think there was a route, a design, there were permissions. What the community was lacking was project management skills, and which is why it got turned down by Sustrans. So it might be worth having a conversation afterwards just to see if we can get that, get a further look at that project, because I think, as I say, they were talking to the structures team previously rather than maybe necessarily the active travel coordinators, that the active travel aspect that would have been most useful.
Thanks, Colin. I've got a wave hand from the back.
It was just to add in, yeah, I'd had a bit of involvement in meeting with the community council on that one, and with Jill Belch, and we'd had taken it quite far on. We'd looked at various different options in terms of through the fields, bridges at Upper Springlands. We'd looked at Bridgend, going through the A94 and the A93, and it's fair to say there's lots of challenges there. They'd kindly offered to take that forward, and at the time, under the funding model with Sustrans, they could make applications to take the funding and deliver the project. What's changed now with the Transport Scotland funding is that it needs to be local authorities or local transport partnerships. So that's taken away the ability from the Scone Community Council to take that project forward, and the onus would be on us or TAC trying to take it forward. What's probably changed is we wouldn't have been in a position probably to resource these projects properly. And the team now is fairly small while we await results of the funding bids. The hope would be if we can tap into the big bucks from the Tier 2 from Transport Scotland, we can build that team and develop that team so we are in a position to take some of these projects forward internally or through management and consultants.
Okay, thank you, that was helpful. And I've got one last question from Councillor Keith Allen.
Yeah, my apologies, Vice Convener. I hadn't pressed my button, so I should have asked the question before Councillor Donaldson. So first of all, I'd like to thank Councillor Donaldson for bringing up Muthil Village Trust, because it is a very important part of the Strathallan strategy. We're looking to do something in that area, but rather than waste the time, I'd just like to bring us back to the Traffic Network team have submitted 6 bids to the Tier 2 Active Travel Infrastructure Fund. As I'm sitting here on behalf of Councillor Forbes, he asked me to thank the team and welcome the fact that you've got an Errol to Grange corridor, £100,000. As at the 28th of April, they're still waiting confirmation of the status of those bids. Have we any idea when those bids are going to be accepted or otherwise? Blair?
We haven't had confirmation on the success for bids as of yet. We're still awaiting.
Okay, thank you, and thank you, Blair. That's appreciated. If there's no further questions, I would look to move the report. This report provides committee with an update on active travel in Perth and Kinross. It shows the projects delivered in 2024-25 and highlights the external investment in active travel in Perth and Kinross area. The report introduces the prioritisation delivery plan, which sets out the strategic vision for the prioritisation of active travel projects in the council area. The plan aligns with Transport Scotland's vision for active travel in Scotland and will enable funding applications to be submitted for Tier 2 funding, as Blair outlined. This would result in significant investment in active travel across Perth and Kinross. I'm happy to accept the recommendations in the report and move the paper for approval. Can I ask Councillor Drysdale to second the report, please?
Yes, I'm happy to second. Thank you.
I'll ask if there are any comments in the report, and I do see Councillor Willie Robertson with a comment. If you can go ahead, please, Willie.
Thank you, Vice Convener. This is a very good report, and it's funny that we were talking earlier on about our tourism strategy. And although this is about active travel, it all links into what people come to Perth and Kinross for, both to live and to on holiday. We're a fantastic tourist destination if you're active and like to cycle. And I think the work that we've done in improving our cycling network has been superb so far, and I'm sure it will get better going forward looking at the plans in this report. So I welcome it, and I'm looking forward to the only trouble, some of the cycle routes you take are not all downhill. As I get older, I find that it's far better if you make them all downhill rather than have long uphill stretches. But apart from that, I'm delighted with the report. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. And I've got a comment from Councillor John Duff.
Thanks, Vice Convener. Yes, I'd like also to thank Blair and his team for this very welcome report. Obviously, active travel routes are important, and they are a bit more difficult in the more rural areas with our sort of narrower twisting roads. And I know that we've had some issues certainly up in my ward trying to put things in at times because of the costs, if you like, of trying to overcome some of the issues there. However, where we can install them well, they certainly do get good use, and I would suggest that the active travel foot and cycle paths, which are part of the Crosty Link Road, are an example of what can be achieved in the right place and with the right design. And certainly every time I travel across the Crosty Link Road, heading over to Scone or whatever, I certainly see that there are a lot of walkers and cyclists, and so it's like using the paths that we put in there. So it's good to note. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments, and I'd also like to say, as someone that lives just out within the A93, that the new Crosty Link Road Destiny Bridge is, as in terms of an active travel route, is it's great to see it so well used, both by runners and cyclists and folks just out enjoying themselves. So they build them and they will come. Blair is my message, and I've got a final comment. Sorry, a comment from Grant Lang. Grant, can you go ahead, please?
Yeah, I would. No point in me adding to everything that everybody else has said about the report. But I think, Blair, that this may be the last time that you'll be in front of us talking about active travel. So thanks for all the work in that you've done. Congratulations on getting your new job, and we'll look forward to tormenting you and that, guys, as well, moving forward. So thanks very much, and thanks for the work you've done. Good luck when you move on.
And Convener?
Yeah, thank you. I'd just like to come back, if I may, to Councillor Robertson's comments, which are spot on. I particularly like the idea of downhill cycle routes, and maybe if we can arrange chair lifts back to the start, that kind of thing, that would be good. But on a serious note, the point you make about why people come to Perth and Kinross, that's such an important point. And whilst we're talking about these papers individually, clearly, the point is that collectively, the work that has been done across the remit of the two strategic leads beside me and overseen by this committee is so important for the future direction of Perth and Kinross, and I would just like to commend all of the officers today for their comments on this paper and on others.
Thank you, convener. If there are no further comments and there are no amendments, can we agree the recommendations set out in the report, please? And finally, I'd like to hand over to Councillor Drysdale just to round up today's business.
Yep, kind of said it all, but thank you everyone for your attendance this morning and this afternoon, and thank you for your contributions. Thank you to everybody who's answered the questions, and thank you to elected members for their questions and comments. Much appreciated. Thank you.